Welcome to episode 131 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Demolished Equipment and Opportunities edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host. I'm here with my co-host, Josh Fine. What's going on, brother? You dried off from Daytona since you ended up going there on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, plenty dry by now, but yeah, I went to Daytona on Saturday. I mean, it was already raining when I left my house to go there, and I've been to Daytona in the past. Excuse me, in 2015, 2020 when it rained, and stayed long enough and saw some racing in both of those instances. But then this time, it didn't happen, which I'm okay with. But so was there for a little bit, and then went home. Well, while I was at the track, I bought some merch, bought some Dale Jr. stickers, and I bought a Jeff Gordon shirt. It was actually pretty nice. The Rainbow Warriors from 1994. It was a pretty good shirt, so I bought that. But while I was at the track, but then went home. Actually made a stop at Buc-ee's, and then went home, and then saw the race on TV. I could have gone back to the track, but I felt like sleeping in, so stayed home, watched the race on TV, watched the clown show that it was, and here we are. So ready to get into it, and dried off and everything, and glad to be on for another week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got the Jeff Gordon shirt from the Hendrick trailer, or was it like a side?
It was at like the pit shop or whatever. Like it was one of the official like track stores inside the concourse. Because my shirt was wet from sweat. Like I had a jacket on for rain, protect myself from the rain.
Yeah,
and then or keep myself dry from that. And then I guess underneath I got my t-shirt. I had my junior motorsports shirt that I had, and it was pretty sweaty and everything. I was like, well, I'm not gonna walk around in this weather with a soaked shirt. So I went to the store and I had to buy a shirt, and I saw a pretty dope Jeff Gordon shirt and got that one.
well, that's a good move there. We definitely will talk about Daytona, and part of the reason, one of the reasons why we have our guest, our regular contributor in full Hendrick Motorsports look with his sun drop hat on and clean shaven. His name is Joe Passero from FanSided and Beyond the Flag. He is here to talk about the clown show that was Daytona this weekend. What's going on, brother?
Not much. Just, recovering from Daytona. I was not there, but I still watched it and still needed to recover a little bit. I too had plans. I was telling Josh, I had plans to be at a race this week, not Daytona. I was going to go to North Wilkesboro. I had to fend off round 2 of COVID, and I only tested negative this morning, so it was too late to leave at that point. So
you're going to see Junior.
Yeah, I was going to see Junior. You know it. But I'm glad to be here. There's a lot to talk about. A lot happened this week, news-wise, both on the track and off the track. We have the playoffs now, so it's going to be a really interesting 10 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, right now, as it stands, we're going to do this one as a NASCAR-only show, unless somehow or another we, zip through all of these topics. I don't think that's possible, considering so much happened here. But Bald Spot Dillon gets a victory. Looked like he was going to back into the victory after NASCAR's infinite wisdom allowed 30 cars or 25 cars to drive into a 24-degree bank corner while it was raining, and 80% of the field was wrecked. We will talk about how all of that went on. But Dillon, they spent hours drying the track to bring it back, 21 laps. Dillon basically had to battle his teammate, Austin Cindric, who he moved out of the way since Austin Dillon thinks he's Dale Earnhardt, I guess. But he goes and wins, backs himself into the playoffs. On the last shot, Martin Truex Jr. falls 3 points short after 26 weeks out of the playoffs. So he will finish 17th in points. He could win the next 10 weeks. He could do what Tony Stewart did in 2006, win 3 races in the playoff. He's going to finish 17th in points. That's not the worst he's finished, of course. He's finished that bad before, and in his time back in the day before he became what he is, he became a Hall of Famer over the last few years, mainly with the help of Toyota and all that. But Martin Truex, he will be back next year, and he'll be motivated since he's going to be coming in as the guy who finished 17th in points, as Ryan Blaney, who got destroyed in one of the many wrecks that took place this weekend. his right front corner was towed all different ways. I don't think it was moving, but somehow or another, the Penske crew, his 12 crew, repaired it, got the thing functional. And after everything that happened, Ryan Blaney finished 15th and gained enough points to somehow or another get his way in. Now, the caveat to that is that team cannot win the Owners' Championship. So if by some chance Ryan Blaney can go and in 10 weeks from now win the Drivers' Championship, Penske will not win the Owners' Championship because Kurt Busch's car, the 45 2311 car, is still eligible to run for the Owners' Championship. So Ty Gibbs, who I assume is going to run out the rest of this season, and I guess means he will not be eligible for Rookie of the Year for whenever he decides to become a Cup driver, which might be next year for all I know, is running for the Owners' Championship. So that's an interesting piece to that. I mean, we see that in the Truck Series. Kind of are going to see that in the Xfinity Series. But it's going to be an interesting turnabout there in the Cup Series. We'll get into that. All that happened in the Coke Zero 400. Kyle Busch, he went and did a hit in the media center and said he had no news, but Eric Almirola is back for 2 more years and is going to have more races sponsored by Smithfield than he ever has before at Stewart-Haas Racing. So that's an interesting deal where he said he was going to retire and now he's going to be back for 2 more years. I brought up a point which we'll talk about in regards to what Kyle Busch is going to do or where he can go. So we'll discuss. Hurt is out of the playoff for the Drivers' Championship. We're just hoping that he'll be able to come back. The longer this goes, it feels a lot like Josh and Joe's guy, Dale Jr. It feels like he's not going to drive anymore, at least not in a Cup car. There's plenty of other vehicles I think Kurt Busch can drive in, but I don't think he's going to be in a Cup car. The questions of the car itself and how rigid it is, they really have to start addressing it. In the Daniel Suarez is coming back. Craftsman is coming back. For the trucks, Greg Ives is retiring. Zane Smith is going to be back with Front Row Motorsports. So all of that went on this past weekend. And we'll get into the Darlington Southern 500, Cookout Southern 500, and start the playoffs. What do we think our picks? Who are we looking to win? Who do we think is a wild card? Who do we think is going to get out of the round of 16? Things we'll talk about. Jeremy Clements, after I think all but he was one of 5 cars that was functional at the end of the race on Friday night. He wins his second career race on the same day on August 26th, as he won his first career race at Road America a few years ago, 2017. So 5 years later, he wins the Wawa 250 at Daytona, gets himself into the playoffs, puts Kaulig Racing and RSS Racing in a big bind, along with Sheldon Creed, RCR, who's outside of the points right now. Huge win for that organization. Just amazing to see for Jeremy Clements. They're a team that has very few employees. They build good motors, cars, or it depends. For them to go and win that race is huge for the sport and for the little guy. A lot of the little guys were able to actually have a good opportunity this weekend once we look at the results, which we'll get into shortly. We will, of course, preview Cup and Xfinity at Darlington. If we do get to it, we'll get into the Belgian Grand Prix. The roundup will cover IMSA GT, F2 and F3, which was at VIR, F2, F3 at Spa. They'll be at Zandvoort this week for the Dutch Grand Prix, MotoGP and Moto2 at Misano. And we will preview U.S. Nationals at Indianapolis this coming weekend, back on Labor Day weekend, and it'll be run on Monday for the first time in a few years. Indy cars will be at Portland, F1 at Zandvoort, and the Max Verstappen Grand Prix. Football and fantasy football talk, Josh's sim segment, and the show close. So, all right, Coke Zero 400, gentlemen, saw the design. Okay, so we'll get into that in a second. But Coke Zero Sugar 400 saw Austin Dillon get his 4th career victory in the Cup Series. Essentially, the first time he might have earned a victory in about a decade. So credit to him on that. His wife was dancing around on pit road in between holding their kid. Austin had to make a uniform change. I'm working under the pretense that him and his wife were fucking each other and he made a mess and he needed to get out of it.
He just
It's
shit himself
entirely
there too.
well, I mean that everyone's making the shitting himself joke and then getting the reference into Tony when he shit himself because he had the diarrhea at Watkins Glen. Boris said going and saying, "Yeah, no, I don't want to go and sit in a seat full of diarrhea," even though he knew he would have won a cup race. Yeah, I honestly believe he was porking her and he came all over the place and he was sweaty. And he decided, oh, I'm just going to change my uniform. I want to make myself look even better, even though he's 4 foot tall and he has a Napoleon complex and he sucks. He goes and wins with help from his teammate, Tyler Reddick. I was just hoping when I was listening to that on the radio because I was out. It's my aunt's birthday a couple days ago, so happy birthday to her. And we went out to this Moroccan restaurant and none of the food had any flavor, but I was thinking about the race. I was talking to Joe. I was trying to keep up with it on Twitter. I got in the car just right in time, got out of the garage, 2 laps to go. And I'm like, come on, Tyler Reddick, do the right thing. Hook Austin Dillon into the wall and let's go and have another restart. Just really do the heel turn. I wanted Tyler Reddick to do the full Ric Flair. He didn't, because he, at least for now, is going to be at RCR next year. Cindric was going for the double at Daytona. He's had a good recent stretch. He's done a really good job. He has locked up Rookie of the Year, more or less, because he's in the playoff. I mean, he did lock up Rookie of the Year when he won the 500, but he definitely is locked up Rookie of the Year now. He had a chance to win that race, but unfortunately got moved by Dillon. Landon Castle gets his best career finish in the Cup Series with a 4th place finish. Noah Gragson finished 5th. The Tate Fogelman algorithm pick. At that point, and once we got to a few laps ago, I'm like, come on, just let it happen now.
Yeah, I was pulling for it, man.
I was like, you know what? Let's just have it happen, because he's sitting there. He thinks he's Tim Richmond. He's trying to really think that he's something that he really isn't, which is an actually good race car driver. So it's like, fine, just let the Beard Motorsports team win. Uncle Brenny had a chance. He went and ended up on his lid at Talladega the one time he really had a chance. I would have signed for that at that point. I was honestly wanting Cody Ware, because there were the meltdowns that would have happened if Cody Ware had won at Daytona would have been outstanding. And I was having that debate with Joe. I'm like, I'm going to buy like Rick Ware Racing merch because it's like Ryan Eversley, but it's like, but Joe's like, it's still Rick Ware Racing merch, but it's like, it's Nerdec ODT, but it's an Acura, but I like Acura and I'm a fan of Ryan Eversley. So it's like, it's Ryan Eversley merch, even though it's still Rick Ware Racing merch. It's whatever. I kind of wanted that to happen. I was trying to have it happen. It didn't. BJ McLeod, Ware 6th, McLeod 7th. Credit to the guy that had Landing or Noah Gragson, Cody Ware, and BJ McLeod in their parlay to win $760,000 on a $10 bet. And then there was another guy for $1,350 that bet Castle, Gragson, Ware, and McLeod and won just under $1 million. So credit to those two gentlemen for having the foresight.
I think it was 70. The first guy was 70K, and then the other guy won the $1 million. So, but those are 2 really good bets there.
I saw 7 or 70. Yeah, 7.
Yeah, 70K.
It was 70K, 70,600, whatever. And then that's my fault, but whatever. It's still a lot of money. It's enough money that it would have made my life a whole lot better if I had the foresight to figure that NASCAR was going to let them run in the rain on an oval. Martin Truex Jr. 8th, David Reagan 9th, and Kyle Busch, winner of the second stage, finished 10th. Bubba Wallace was 11th. There were only 10 cars on the lead lap. There was 11 cars within 1 lap. And then after that, it's just basically a disaster. Blaney, as I mentioned, finished 15th. So a lot to get into. Larson started on pole. He did start on pole in the 500 as well this year. So he swept the poles, a Hendrick kind of tradition, going and winning poles at Daytona. But engine problems for Kyle Larson, not good considering the momentum. Lost a lot of points opportunities. He was probably going to be second in points if he had essentially ran the race by only making it, 14 laps. He really had no chance and lost out on an opportunity to gain points on Clyde. Clyde was up there, and he got knocked out. He ended up leading the most laps, Clyde, and got a second in stage 1. And but lost out. I mean, he was going to win the regular season anyway. We already knew that. He's going to have 40 playoff points, which is what he's got. And he's got a 15-point lead now leading into the playoffs over Joey Logano, 20 on Chastain, 21 on Larson. And something we'll get into in a little bit is after Larson, how intriguing the points battle really is. But Josh, I'll throw to you first, man. A lot happened yesterday, a lot of wrecks. Brad Keselowski and Christopher Bell early. They were taken out there amongst, it was Kevin Harvick, Keselowski, Hamlin, Blaney. That was the Blaney wreck. Eric Jones was up front. He got moved off the 11 car and destroyed a lot of crap, 30-something laps into the race. Then after that, it was pretty tame until the end of stage 2. Then after stage 2 ended, they started yard sailing cars, which included Martin Truex Jr. and Ross Chastain, Corey LaJoie, who looked like somebody who could have won, which would have also been hilarious after he gets eliminated from actually being able to make it in. He had a good car, but that's not shocking. That's what Spire does. They really only run well at about 3 or 4 racetracks a year. But yeah, the two guys that were battling for one spot, it became really interesting after that wreck. And Blaney somehow or another makes it through. Austin Dillon backs into the playoffs, gives 2 drivers from RCR into the playoff. A lot went on yesterday at Daytona for sure in the Coke Zero 400, Josh.
Yeah, a lot went on for sure. I mean, a lot of aggressive driving, especially when the rain was coming. The second half of the race, a lot of aggressive racing through the field. One of those wrecks, Chase Briscoe made a move to basically take the lead, and then got high, and then Alex Bowman got in the back of him.
Sent by Alex Bowman. Yeah, yep. That was lovely. And Alex, and I'm sorry, before you go for it, I'll just say this. He went and basically said, "Oh, it wasn't Alex Bowman's fault," and all that, and whatever. That's fine, but you're literally the worst driver in the playoff. And you're going for a win, and Alex Bowman's probably second or third on that list. I mean, now that Dillon's in there, he's pretty bad as well. But he has as many or more top 5s than the 14 car and a couple other people. Like, dude, he had a piece yesterday. He's had a piece at multiple super speedway races. It's been the product of his whole entire year. Having pace at times and not being able to pay it off, and having bullshit happen all the time. It's why you're on the bump. Ugh, God, I was in it. I was not very happy. I was doing the F1 Grid Talk podcast when I saw Briscoe take the lead and then getting sent off the front end of frickin' Alex Bowman, and I wanted to throw something through my TV, but I couldn't because I was live on the frickin' show.
Oh man, that would be some content there, destroying the TV there. No, but I mean, the reason I brought that up is because that was the pass leading up to that was pretty aggressive. Going up there and trying to be the first one in line on the high side there. But that was an example of aggressive racing. You had leading up to the rain, Denny Hamlin was trying to fight for the lead right there against Daniel Suarez. Just a lot of aggressive bump drafting through the corners. Some drivers couldn't take it through the corner, and they could only be bump drafted on the straights. But a lot of furious racing, of course, between drivers trying to make it in playoffs. Truex, Ryan Blaney, until he got crashed, trying to be able to make it survive the race so they can stay in the playoffs and not get eliminated. But I think the main topic of discussion is the big crash on lap 139 with 21 laps to go in this race, and the rain causing the wreck. There's a lot of debate online where when the rain exactly did it occur, and I know you guys think it was at least a lap before, and I would have to say it probably started at least when they were on the backstretch of the previous lap. Because there's fan videos there, at least one where one of the fans said it's raining right now on the front stretch, and they're going around, and I mean you can kind of see on the camera like as they get close to turn like from turn 4 the previous lap going to turn 1 when they crashed, rain starts to pick up as they get closer to turn 1. So there was already rain, and that was from Justin Haley's on board there. So there's already rain starting to happen. And I guess, the conclusion from that is NASCAR has got to do a better job of when to throw the caution for rain, because, sometimes, you can drive through the mist as they did earlier in the race at the very beginning. You could see mist starting to form up, but, right before, in this instance and the big one, you could start to see it pick up right as they got into turn 1. So and it's a very hard, fine line. Very fine line, and it's very hard to determine exactly that. But they I guess incompetence there leads to a situation where certain drivers get eliminated from the playoffs, and then you have a driver not really deserving of a playoff spot in the first place suddenly in contention to win one. And I mean, I'd say it if it was Bubba Wallace too, if he had managed to get through that. I mean, yeah, it would have been a lot cooler than Austin Dillon, but still the same thing applies. Guy, in the bottom half of this, not the bottom half of the standings, but in the bottom half of the top 20, getting in versus Ryan Blaney or Martin Truex, being able to get in. Do they really deserve to get in playoffs versus those two? It's a big question there. So yeah, the wreck was egregious, I guess, on NASCAR's end, managing the race and stuff. So, NASCAR, they got to do a better job of that. And then, of course, with the rain, of course, we talked about all year the cars crashing harder than what they have in the past, or at least feeling harder than what they had in the past. And I mean, you saw a good example there, especially with Ricky Stenhouse basically getting on top of another car in the middle of turn 1 since everybody lost traction. Yep, that's right. So, yeah, I mean, the NASCAR, they talked about it before with NASCAR's new chassis design this year. They designed it so that it would survive the 3% of the crashes, where the other 97% it seems like it hits harder, feels harder. And so I don't know what the answer is to that, other than they got to, I guess, figure out a way to make a stiffer or not as stiff chassis there. So, we'll see what they decide to do in the off season and what they decide to adjust for that. And I mean, we were talking about before the show, but I mean, I think my feeling is that they had Ryan Newman's 2020 Daytona crash in mind with this design or crashes like that, and that the chassis would not break, because we saw that car basically get the roll cage get destroyed like that, and maybe they designed it so the roll cage wouldn't get destroyed like that, but maybe in the end the driver is just like a broken egg, I guess, and someone gets seriously injured or concussed like Kurt Busch is currently right now. So that's something they got to go back to the drawing board. The engineers got to go back and figure out a different way to design it so it's not like this, because even what we heard from this season, just a bump in the back bumper seems to feel pretty hard. So they got to figure out a different way and certainly make these crashes a lot more survivable, especially at places like Daytona and Talladega, where they crash pretty hard and quite frequently.
And it's something that we really have to look at because of where Kurt Busch is at, and he had to go and withdraw, as we said earlier, his waiver into the playoffs because he's not going to be able to participate, and we don't know if he's going to participate the rest of this season. You have this Darlington this weekend would have probably been a great spot for him to come back, but he knows he's not going to come back. We knew he wasn't going to run Daytona. I get that, and it makes sense he didn't based on what happened. You also look at, Kansas at a racetrack where he won the race earlier this year, was a Toyota benefit. Maybe he comes back there. And then Bristol's one of his best racetracks in his career, but hard hits are hard hits no matter where you have them. It's something that is unfortunate, and I think what we talked about, the three of us talked about offline, it's funny how our offline conversations are probably just as good, if not better, than what we do on here, which may speak to something we might have to do at a later date. But I think we have to really look at, the way the construction of this car It may be constructed in a way that works in GT racing, where you have lots of runoff areas and sand traps and tire barriers, and you're going into corners at different rates of speed, but you're not going in as fast. There's also the aspect of how the car goes and dissipates energy, which means like you see lots of destruction, or you see pieces being removed from the car. This car has proven that it doesn't really budge. And it kind of reminds me, unfortunately, of yesteryear with the Gen 4 car, maybe the Gen 3 car, actually, essentially Gen 3, Gen 4 era, year 2000, when we were having all the issues with basilar skull fractures amongst all three series, where we lost 4 drivers, of course, most famously Dale Earnhardt Sr., where the incidents and the head-on collisions, lack of give relative to the lack of safety equipment. They said, they didn't have Hans devices, they didn't have full-face helmets, they didn't have this, that, and the other. Well, that's fine, but when the cars are so rigid, essentially like, say, Jeff Gordon's T-Rex car, and you hit the wall, where's the energy going? You'd always remember the days of when the gas tanks would go and catch on fire when you go and slam the wall. But then the point is, you're going you're putting gas tank deep, you're going firewall deep. The energy, things are going to fall off the car. When Elliott Sadler went and hit the wall, hit the dirt embankment at Pocono, and his whole motor got ripped out of the car in the Gen 5 car, and the whole thing was destroyed. He was knocked out of breath. He had to go and get out, but he got out on his own power, and he raced next week. Kurt Busch hit, it wasn't the hardest hit. Everyone's like, it wasn't that hard of a hit. But the point is, he didn't walk out of that car essentially feeling all that great. He didn't look like he was his usual self. And that was in the middle of July, and we were at the end of August when we're doing the show, and he still hasn't gotten back in a race car. So what the hell is NASCAR doing? What are you going to do? You want a GT car on an oval that doesn't work. The point is, the Gen 5 and Gen 6 cars missed in many areas. But one thing that I can say for sure the Gen 5 and Gen 6 cars was good at is safety in regards to keeping the drivers here. There's enough incidents that took place that in previous years would have meant death. In those cases, we still have those drivers here. Dillon went and ate it in the catch fence in 15 at Daytona at the end of the race when Dale Jr. won it. That should have been the worst of the worst. He gets out of the car waving his hand, all that, because of the safety. The Ryan Newman wreck, which you talked about. In this car, maybe it would have been a little bit more safe, but who knows? We'll talk about Sheldon Creed's incident on Friday also in a little bit. But I mean, Joe, I guess we'll start on that aspect, and then you can go and give your thoughts on the race in general. The safety of this car, I think when Denny Hamlin, you said, was talking about it, other people are talking about it. I think we have a real problem here, and nobody really wants to deal with it because NASCAR media ain't going to say anything about it, and NASCAR itself isn't going to say anything about it. But if the likes of Denny Hamlin, who's one of the stakeholders in this sport, and is a driver and is trying to win his first career championship, and one of his drivers is out of the series right now because of it, that's something that has to be addressed. And I think that was the elephant in the room going back to last year during the testing as well.
Yeah, during the testing process last year, I believe it was the first time that a driver crashed a car. It was either Byron or Buster. Yeah, it was Byron at Auto Club, if I remember correctly. And from that day, he said, that hit felt unusually hard. And obviously we don't have footage of that crash. We can't really compare, right? Like what would we see as opposed to how he felt? But for that to be the first wreck and be running completely alone on the racetrack and to have that hard of an impact, it is worrisome. And it doesn't really seem like that's been a one-off instance. It seems like that was the start of what has become a trend here in 2022 with crashing this next-gen car. I get that they want to make a car that, maybe tailors itself to those types of really bad wrecks, the Dillon wreck in 15, the Newman wreck, you say, in 2020. But that's 3%. What about the other 97, right? I mean, cars are going to crash every week. It's just a part of racing now, right? You don't have those races anymore like you do back in even the early 2000s to the mid 2000s where you could go a race caution free, right? They once upon a time ran caution free at Talladega in 2002. They almost did it twice. So, it's worrisome, right? As a fan, it's worrisome because, we have instances where our drivers are not there, all right? I mean, Kurt Busch, he's been around for a really long time, and he's had things happen that have sort of taken his career one way or another. But I think maybe this is probably the most impactful. He's always recovered, but it's always been things like contracts, like sponsors, like finding the next place to go. It's never been a matter of his health. And that's, I think, what is really scary, because I think a lot of people, especially people who maybe haven't had the opportunity to go to a race, it's a little hard to remember that, like, these people, yeah, they're entertaining you, but they are people, right? You go up, they sign an autograph, that's still another human being. They're just writing something on something you handed to them. And I think when you think about that, it puts a lot in perspective, because you never want to see anybody get hurt. I don't care if you like Kurt Busch or not. You shouldn't be rooting for him to get hurt. If you are, then I'm certainly not watching a race or buying a beer for you. It's disappointing, really. The NextGen car, I think, has a lot of great features in it that has helped propel racing in NASCAR to another level. I think we've seen it in the amount of winners. I think we've seen it in just the quality of the racing at most of the tracks this year. However, the safety is one thing that really concerns me. You said it, the hallmark of the Gen 5, the car tomorrow, as well as the Gen 6, was the great safety features that we were able to improve on from the past generation of car. I was part of that media announcement. I was watching it on Zoom. They really didn't mention anything about safety. It was almost like for the first time in 20 years, safety was put to the wayside. And, I think we've gotten to a point where if the safety stayed stagnant from the Gen 6 car, that's one thing, because we kind of know at that point what it's like. But it doesn't seem to have been stagnant. It seems to maybe have taken a step back, and maybe not even a big step back. But for drivers to constantly get out of this car and complain that something hurts it worries me, right? When are we going to see that wreck, right? That 3% wreck that we talk about, and how hurt is this driver going to be, right? Hopefully not, but if we're taking hits, and I'll say Denny Hamlin, when he got out of the car this weekend, you kind of tell he was aching. But I can't even say that. I think that's the hardest hit I've seen in his career, So to say that, it's like there's something just off-putting about it to me. It's very strange. And I think just generally the safety with this car is strange. I was at Pocono. I watched Kurt wreck him back into the wall. I've seen harder hits at a racetrack. To me, I really didn't think of it, right? There was no abnormal noise that I heard when the car crashed. There was nothing abnormal. I mean, Kurt, he got out of the car pretty gingerly. But other than that, there was nothing abnormal. So to be at the track the next day to hear he's not racing, it's so concerning, right? Now, I think, Phil, you had said, maybe be reminiscent of Dale Jr. back in 2016. I think there are some similarities, right? Dale Jr. in 2016, he had runs that would basically put him top 10, and then he had runs where he'd crash and he'd be out of the race. This year, I think Kurt's had a somewhat similar year, right? He's had those really good runs. He's had the runs that crash and put him out of the race. And I think he, very much like Dale Jr. back in 2016, has had maybe an abnormal amount of wrecks or incidents that, he spun and sustained some damage. And granted, times are different, but I see that's what a lot of people, on Twitter, Facebook, on social media, that's what they're attributing Kurt's concussion to. But I do just want to throw it out there. I'm not a concussion expert. I've done some studying on concussions. I did my senior capstone on concussions. I did 2 college papers on concussions. I've read Dale Jr.'s book about concussions. And I think what people are maybe failing to realize when they say, well, it's the series of hits. Yes, that can be true. There's nothing to discredit that. But in those series of hits, he would have to be injuring the same part of his brain or the same parts enough times, right? It's probably easier to get a concussion from one hit as it would be to injure the same part of your brain to actually have been hurt enough to be called a concussion, right? There's a lot of different parts of the brain, right? And to have a bruise on one of them is essentially what is a concussion. So if he keeps wrecking and keeps injuring the same part of the brain, okay, that's one thing. And I can't help but wonder now, because he's been out for so long, is that what happened? Did he, throughout the course of the season, injure his brain on numerous parts? And then possibly the one wreck at Pocono was just what put him overboard. And, I don't know. We're not really going to find out unless Kurt tells us. It's super concerning, really, is where it's at. And I think maybe they do need to redesign parts of this car. I know they left it open for future modification. I don't know how much they did that with the Dallara chassis that they're working with now, but hopefully that is the case, and they can go back and maybe find something that helps fine tune how impactful these crashes are with these drivers. As far as the rest of the race goes, it was really nice to see everybody in some sense be aggressive and be too wide and watch multiple lanes work throughout the race. I feel like sometimes we don't get that. And I always worry about the Daytona race in July in particular, because if it has to run during the day, it's really hot and slimy, and it just naturally lends itself to more crashes, regardless of whether or not the drivers are being aggressive. So it was nice to see, in some sense, how aggressive the drivers were getting with a low attrition rate during the first two stages. I liked seeing all the drivers really get after it. I had made this very long tweet thread earlier in the week about how I thought this group of drivers should be really aggressive. This group of drivers probably going to conserve their car. I feel like everybody was really on the more aggressive side. And, I think really the biggest thing that was interesting to watch was after Blaney crashed at the end of the first stage, because now it throws in a totally new element. And it probably looked like for most of the race, Truex was going to be able to make up that 25, 26 point gap that he entered with. Obviously, things changed. Truex had his incident that ripped off a fender, and then we had the rain. Right now, as far as the rain goes, this is the second instance in the last 2 years where NASCAR has failed to throw a yellow flag for rain, right? Happened at Loudon last year. Kyle Busch, Truex, and I believe there was one other car, maybe Hamlin and Bowman, who all kind of slid up the track. And obviously the 19 and the 18 hit pretty hard. I believe it ended 2 of their days. And then, the 48 and the 11 made their contact. But this is the second time, and it's a lot worse this time because they did it at a track that they're going to run twice as fast. Through most of the track, probably the average speed is got to be at least twice as fast at Daytona than it is at Loudon. So, it's concerning. I feel like Loudon, it was, it didn't really look like it was raining so much. You couldn't really see it on the cameras until after they had crashed. I know the drivers, some of them had kind of said it felt slick the lap before, but it's Loudon. A lap at Loudon is 30 seconds. A lap at Daytona is about, 42 to 45. So, I would hope that extra 15 seconds, 15 seconds is a long time in racing. I would hope that extra 15 seconds would help make a determination, but I'll be honest, I was really disappointed. From watching at home, saw rain on certain camera angles about a lap before they had that accident. Like Josh said, there were videos from fans who were there and who were recording, and it was about 30 seconds before they actually crashed that fans recognized that it was raining on the front stretch. I just don't really understand what happened on NASCAR's part. I don't know if, the spotters that are placed at the 4 corners were just barely removed from the rain and it was just too late. I don't know if, there's no real way of telling, right? But the bottom line is that this is the second instance in a little over a calendar year, right, that we've had this, and it has taken cars out of the race, right? It was one thing at Loudon. I know Kyle was mad, but it was only a few cars, right? For the most part, people got away pretty good. They wrecked everyone this weekend except for the 3 and the 2. Only 2 cars that were in that large pack that really didn't get involved with anything. I don't know. I've really tried over a long period of time to to give the benefit of the doubt on what my opinion are on some rain-related cautions. But, I go back to the Daytona road course in 2021, there was a sprinkle for about 10 seconds that went away. I don't really see the need to throw a caution, yet they throw a caution. And arguably even doing that ruined a driver's day. Not throwing a caution at Loudon ruined a few drivers. I mean, they yard sailed it. That was, maybe the largest one I've seen in quite a few years. So, grateful everybody was able to walk away from that crash. I hate that Hamlin, felt the impact of it. I'd like to know how Suarez is doing because he hit a massive, he just went straight up into the wall. That scared me because to me, that looked a lot like Dale Earnhardt when he passed. That looked very freakishly similar where he turned down the racetrack and then this violent turn back up. And that one scared me a lot. So, safety, big deal, whether that's the car or whether that's just throwing a caution. Hopefully there's something that NASCAR can learn from this instance, and hopefully maybe they decide in the future that they get a little bit more aggressive about throwing a caution, right? You had to anticipate they were going to crash one way or another. Rain was not exactly what I had in mind, but that was the caution that allowed Austin Dillon to really take control of the race. He did lose the lead to Cindric, and Cindric had the opportunity to really cement his name in a really historic record book of just a few drivers, right? I think Jimmy Johnson was the last to sweep Daytona in 13, and before him, I believe it was one of the Bakers. I think it was maybe Buddy Baker in 82 or Buck Baker in 82. I don't quite remember that far back. I wasn't alive, but it's the first time since 82 or 83 before Johnson. So, that would have been a really historic achievement. I don't know that Dillon really meant to hit him hard, that hard at least. But I also can't blame him. The win in your in system demands a win. He needed a win. He found a way to get one. Reddick, I think Reddick probably had the best car at the end of the race, despite having some damage. But he decided that he wanted to smooth things over with Richard Childress and did the right thing to keep his career intact for the next year and change. Making that move probably helped a lot of people at RCR. So, really interesting end to the race. I actually kind of hoped that they were just going to call it because I didn't really care to see, a line of 5 or 6 cars drive in a line for 20 laps. I'll be honest, the end of the race was better than what I thought it was going to be. But all the less, it was just a very strange weekend more than anything, I think. And, I think certain calls and certain things happening at certain times probably affected Truex being out of the playoffs. Inevitably, one way or another, they did. So there's a lot of people in New Jersey right now, in my area, who watch racing, who are probably upset. But that's the way it goes. I know there's a lot of heat right now on NASCAR from the fans. I get it, right? If you look at it, right, Truex really hasn't been behind 8th in points at any point this year. Climbed as high as 2nd in points at one point during the race. If they had ended the race with 20 to go, he would have finished the regular season 2nd and would have advanced over Blaney. But, you really, at the same time, I have this argument inside of myself. It's like, well, he didn't win, right? That's the game. Winning, you're in, and he didn't do it. So, he's SOL. So, to all the fans who are out there, I think they definitely have the right idea of don't hate the player, hate the game, because I haven't seen Truex get any hate. But I think fans need to really start becoming a lot more vocal in a serious manner when they go to air their frustration on socials about what they want to see in the playoffs, right? Because we have to keep in mind this playoff system that NASCAR invented, this was the year they wanted to see, right? We got the 16 winners. We got plenty of drama, plenty of stuff to talk about. And now we're going to go into the playoffs, and there really is no championship favorite.
Yeah, I think that's something that seeing somebody who is good enough points-wise, now with the reset, I can't go and quantify it. I wish I could go and quantify it based on that. I have to go and find somewhere where they show the regular points, but it's a good thing that you brought up there, Joe.
I got the regular points if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, so, you brought up the fact that Truex was 2nd at a point yesterday during the race. The fact that for a while, I think until recently, both Blaney and Truex were second and fourth in points. I think they entered yesterday's race third and sixth in regular points. And it goes into a... Go ahead.
Yeah, they were third and sixth. With the official results, they ended third and fourth. Truex was 3 back, 798 to Blaney's 801. And then comparatively speaking to... I did the math wrong there. But, he was 141 back of the leader. And then you take Austin Dillon after winning the race was 374 back of the leader. So that's more than double. That's a considerable gap. So I understand totally where fans are coming from, where it's like, Truex really should be in, if you ask me. I know exactly what I just said. Don't hate the player, hate the game. I think there is an adjustment that needs to be made. That's probably for a different time and a different show because we are heading into the playoffs. But I would hope that in the future that NASCAR recognizes this and maybe says there maybe is something we can do. Top 5 automatically get in, top 10 automatically get in, something like that.
Well, that's what we had when we had I don't know how many versions. I guess there's websites that go over all the different versions of the chase and the now playoff and whatever the hell they want to call it. But I remember the first change, which was out from 10 to 12, which was essentially a reaction to Dale Jr. and Jeff Gordon missing the playoff in 05, which all 5 Roush cars made, which Hendrick freaked out about, and then they changed it to a 4-team rule, which has screwed him over, which is hilarious in its own right. But the most popular driver and the guy that could have possibly won his 5th championship, getting knocked out of the playoff, or coming off of a possibility to win a 5th championship, getting knocked out. Tony Stewart wins that championship by a few points over Greg Biffle, who was probably the best driver that year anyway. Then in 2006, the defending series champion gets knocked out by Candy Kane and wins 3 races in the playoff, and it doesn't count for jack crap, and finishes 11th in points. And then they made the 12-driver rule, which was top 10 in points with 2 drivers, the top 2 drivers outside of the top 10 in points with the most wins. So Josh and I had that discussion last week in episode 130, and through further science in my own mind, the 12-driver rule, personally, there should be 12 drivers, which would knock out Chase Briscoe. And I keep on saying this. You can go and question me, whatever. I'm a Chase Briscoe guy. Chase Briscoe does not belong in the playoff. And I'm saying this as a Chase Briscoe fan, knowing that Tony Stewart said the same exact thing. We're just wasting a spot. Briscoe could go off right now, put me in oblivion, and go and have the best 10 races of his freaking life. If he does that, God bless him. There's signs that it exists, but it has not been good enough to where, he has less top 5s than fucking bald spot Dillon. That's pathetic. Because Austin Dillon's completely irrelevant in most cases. Dillon has 4 more top 10s. He has 1 more top 5 than Chase Briscoe. And I guess the 1 more top 5 happened yesterday because he won. It's crazy to think. He has a 19 average finish. To be completely honest, I'm a fan of the worst driver that in this playoff field, and he'd have been eliminated under any real pretense. He'd have been knocked out of this playoff field, no problem, and that would have also knocked out the likes of Alex Bowman. Dillon would have had no chance. Cindric would have been knocked out. I figure maybe by a point or something. I don't know what the overall points were. Joe, you could tell me, but I think that I say the top 8 in points, my move would be top 8 in points gets locked in no matter what, which would have meant that Blaney and Truex, no matter what happened to them yesterday, would have had them in. And then 4 drivers wild card.
Who are the 2 drivers we're looking at, you said?
Truex, what's it called? Cindric and Suarez. So at the end of the Daytona race, Daniel Suarez had 627 points. Austin Cindric had 614. So they were relatively close, but favor to Suarez. So in the end, yes. Austin Cindric would have in my hypothetical playoff, so we would have knocked out the Daytona 500 winner, knocked out Chase Briscoe, more than likely Alex Bowman, and it would have knocked out Austin Dillon, even though he won. But Martin Truex would have made the playoff, and Daniel Suarez would have made the playoff on the cutoff spot, which is fine. I mean, at the end of the day, Blaney, Martin Truex making the playoff, Christopher Bell has been way better than what his results really show in a lot of ways. Kyle Busch might be one of his worst years of his career, to be honest, but considering everything that's going on, I mean, and the fact is Chase Briscoe's the only reason why he has a win, because he went and ran through Tyler Reddick at the Bristol Dirt Race. And to be completely fair, Chase Briscoe should have won at least another race this year.
600.
He should have fucking won the Coca-Cola 600, but he's too nice, and he wrecked himself off of Kyle Larson instead of running through Kyle Larson. Then he's going, Alex Bowman didn't run through me. I made a block, and it didn't work out well. Now, I'm starting to deal with it. Like, I'm going through the stages of grief, and I'm starting to realize that I'm a fan of a guy that's too nice, that is not going to be able to do the job. And now I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm going to root for a guy that runs 20th every week, which means I'm not going to root for him. I'm going to be a fan of him as a person. And he's a great guy, but dude, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry. It's like me trying to watch Formula One. The only reason I watch Formula One now, I'm probably going to be watching Formula One for the next 4 years, is because I have to do a side podcast. Otherwise, I don't want to watch it. I don't give a fuck. My driver's not in contention. I don't want to watch it. I'm a grown man. It's like, it's not worth it to me. I'm not going to wake up at 8:00 in the morning to watch my guy finish fourth. I don't give a fuck. I'll go and do something else. I'll go and work out, go and get breakfast, do something else, go and smell the roses and all that shit. I'd rather do that than watch Fish Lips win. It's the same way as I don't want to watch fucking Kyle Larson win or Kyle Busch or whoever, some other dick dillweed like, Pace Elliott. Like, I don't care. I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch my driver be irrelevant. I had to watch Tony Stewart be irrelevant for the last, 5 years of his career. 4 years of his career. 4.5. And Ernie be irrelevant for the last, I don't know, I guess 2.5 years of his career. I'm not good for that. I don't care anymore. I don't love this. I don't care for NASCAR, WWE bullshit to do that. And so all of that rounded out, I'm calling for 12 drivers, top 8 get locked in with 4 wild cards. That would have been a more intriguing battle, because that would have been like, if somebody who has 1 win gets 2 wins, they'll jump Daniel Suarez. And even with Austin Dillon doing what he did yesterday, whatever. God bless you. You still got fucked. Your show sucks. Your wife was dancing around like a whore. Her BFF, who's way better looking than her. And there was a thing because what's his name? One of the other media guys was posting the video of the Open for NASCAR and NBC with Blake Shelton bringing back the sunshine.
That was Phil,
Aaron
right?
Bearden. Phil Spain. And then our former, somebody who's been on this show, but Aaron Bearden too, linked to that. And I'm like, the only reason I downloaded that song is because that was the Open for NASCAR on NBC. And it's not, Metallica, their original Open back in 2001, but I love that song. I'm like, it reminds me of that video and all the idiot shit that went on, Junebug getting into whatever, and that was why I like that song. And I think I'm a fan of Blake Shelton mainly because of the voice, because I like the voice, but it was like a reminder of all those great songs, those intro songs, and I'm like, why can't there be the ESPN Speed World theme from like the moment that they started in 1981 till their like end? And I would download that and I would just have it. It would be in like a loop, continuous loop, and I might end up getting stopped on the highway because I hear ESPN Speed World theme, and then add like Dave McClellan from the NHRA. Oh, we have cars going 300 miles an hour. nitro car is going 300 miles an hour and like I can't do it right now, but it's like he does the intros into the NHRA thing with the ESPN Speed World team that like, yeah, I could listen to that all day. But
Hey,
yeah.
Phil, I'm going to interject myself here because I was actually curious about the math behind what you were saying. If you did 8 drivers get locked in, then you've got the top 8. That's Elliott, Logano, Blaney, Truex, Larson, Chastain, Bell, Kyle Busch. Your 4 wild cards would actually be Kevin Harvick, William Byron, Tyler Reddick, and Denny Hamlin. Bowman would be the first driver out on points, then Suarez, Cindric, Jones, Briscoe, Almirola, Dillon.
Yeah, see, that's reasonable.
Yeah,
That's a legitimate
I like
playoff.
that playoff field. I feel. I mean, look, the 4 drivers who are outside of the top 8 in points, they all have 2 wins. To me, if you win twice, I mean, I don't really think you can win twice in a season with both of them being a sham, unless you were the luckiest person on earth. Then you need to go play the lottery. But I like that playoff field. I think that's a fairly good playoff field to represent the 2022 season.
And considering what we're going to deal with here with this 10 race field, there you could say there will be a good champion that comes out of that 12. And to be completely honest, I think one of those 12, based on that breakdown, is going to be there. That's not a big branch to be climbing on, to be fair, and I need a big branch because I'm getting fatter. But the fact is, that is a legitimate field. All those guys have 2 wins. It puts the emphasis on the 1-win drivers to actually have to go and say, hey, oh shit, I have to win at Daytona. I have to hope for a miracle and I don't get wrecked and all this other stuff. So you're essentially putting all those guys in. Alex Bowman sucked for most of this year. That's why there's talk that he's going to get replaced. I mean, I love Daniel Suarez. He's a great guy, great person, minus who he dates. He drives for a great team. He's gone through a lot and he's been better than what his results show. He's had a lot of bad results at the end, but he's been up front. But unlike his teammate, who has been able to pay it off and wreck people week after week like Ernie Irvin used to do, and Dale Earnhardt and all that, Suarez hasn't been able to pay it off. So you said it was Bowman, Suarez, Cindric, and Briscoe that would have been knocked out based on that format.
Bowman, and Suarez, Cindric, Jones, although he didn't win, Briscoe, Almirola, Dillon, although he didn't win either. Those would have been your guys eliminated.
And then Dillon would have been eliminated, which is whatever, who cares? At that point, it would have been, it's a win. You get in the all-star race, wherever the hell that's going to be and whatever the hell that format's going to be. So you get the benefit of being in the all-star race. Everybody's in the clash at the Coliseum, so that's okay. But you're not going to make the playoffs. There has to be more. It's like, oh, you win a race and you're in. And it's like, okay, but you can backdoor win and get into the playoffs. It's like, and I'm going to go and basically cancel myself because I'm happy that Jeremy Clements won. But then it's the Xfinity Series. Everybody and their mother knows that Jeremy Clements needs money and we'll transition. This is the way we'll transition into it. A team, 5 drivers or 5 people that are involved, including Jeremy and his dad that are on that team, whatever. They got volunteer pit crew members and the whole bit. Goes and wins an Xfinity race at Daytona. Granted, they destroyed 88% of the field or more, 92% of the field. I can't do the math off the top of my head. I will in a second. But, the story is what it's about. Like, you can go and actually make this look good for NASCAR in that Jeremy Clements, 5 years after his first win, gets his second win at Daytona. The fact is, it's never going to get any better for him and his dad and his family and his wife, who was about to pass out, it looked like, on pit road because she couldn't believe that her husband just went and won at Daytona. I mean, that after everything we had to go through to get to that finish was worth it, Joe. And he's in the playoff. He's going to get eliminated in the first round, and that's fine. I mean, I actually wanted to bring up the other thing. You were bringing up Buddy Baker. You were mixing it up because he drove for Die Guard in the 28 car. It was Bobby Allison in 82. In 82 with the bumper issue that Gary Nelson set up on that car. and the bumper fell off in the 82 Daytona 500, and he won that race. And then he won the Coke Zero 400. Back then, definitely wasn't a Coke Zero 400. We know
Firecracker 400.
Firecracker 400. But
I was going to say Baker doesn't sound right. Baker I think I was 2 years off because I think
Baker won the race in 80.
80, yeah.
He set the record that I think only recently got broken.
Daytona 500 ever.
I think it was broken, or I'm mixing it up with the Indianapolis 500, because Indianapolis 500 was set by Harry Lunatic in 90, and I think Tony Kanaan, when he won in 2013, broke it. I think that's what it was. Bobby Allison in 82 and Jim Johnson in 2013 won both of those races. That was the last person to sweep the races at Daytona. But in regards to the Xfinity series, it kind of flips things on its lid, man. You have a guy that was not going to make the playoff under any circumstance unless he wins, and this is essentially the last place that he could win to get in. Big victory for Jeremy Clements. Puts himself in a place where he has a point. He has points on Herbst, Mayer, Hemrick, and Castle, Eeg, and Reed, who essentially are the 6 drivers that he's battling at this point. Bruckshot Jones as well is a point ahead of him, and he sucks. But he goes and wins this race over Timmy Hill. God bless him. Boot Scoot Boogie. They didn't make his diecast from when he won on iRacing. Gets a second place finish with Hendrick equipment. AJ Allmendinger gets a third place finish, so still looking for that first super speedway race. He was not happy at the end of that when he got out and was an interview.
He hates that place.
Well, I mean, he hates super speedway racing in general, even though the irony is in his Cup career, he's had some of his better finish. He's had some of his best finishes on super speedways, but he hates it, which I get when you are a road racer. Brandon Brown crying, emotional, wanted to win, needed a win to basically keep his career going. Finished 4th. Sage Karam gets a top 5 finish with his whole splitter making a smiley face. The Alpha Prime team. Ryan Vargas, Chicken Nuggets, Chicken Nuggy Boy, getting replaced on road courses on the regular, gets a 6th place finish. Keebler Gibbs 7th, Alex LeBay 8th, JJ Yaley. So 2 drivers in the top 10 for Carl Long. Kyle Sieg rounds out the top 10. There were 15 cars on the lead lap, including Jesse Iwuji. Somehow or another, Jesse Iwuji got 11th place finish. So hell can freeze over. The guy can actually finish somewhere near the front in a NASCAR race, even though he has no ability whatsoever. So I mean, you had Allgaier in that. Austin Hill, who had a front-end issue, destroyed front end from one of the many wrecks that took place, was trying to win that race and get another super. That would have been the 3rd super speedway win of the year if he had done that. But in the end, you have the guy who was 16th in points, Jeremy Clements, is now in the playoff, past maggot moron Brett Moffitt, who's not racing anymore. For that position. Now he is 16th in points. He's 47 points behind Brandon Brown, who's made every start, but I'm not sure from what I see if he's going to be in, he's going to be in the 78 car. So he's still going to be eligible, driving for BJ McLeod. But the 78 car, I think, has issues points wise. But, Joe, to you, crazy night. On Friday night, rain issues, went late, but Jeremy Clements going and winning this race is a good one for the little guy, getting that victory on Friday night.
Yeah, and really the Daytona race, I feel like, was good for the little guys. In Cup, there were a handful of drivers, top 10, who, the little teams that got, and I think likewise in Xfinity, a handful of teams that you wouldn't normally see run near the front, finish up front. probably picked up a lot of valuable R&D dollars this week. I say that I think it somewhat sounds like a joke. I'm not kidding. I think that would be the idea, is that they can try and hold some of that money for R&D to try and get a little closer to the front more frequently. But yeah, I mean, this was a big win for Clements, right? He got the one win at Road America, and he had a stretch of good road races after that. He kind of fizzled out, and we haven't really heard much of Jeremy Clements since. I feel like he's always pretty frequently around the top 10, maybe a little further back, but we don't normally see him as driver finishing in the top 10. We don't normally hear about him being in the playoffs. Is kind of there, right? But he's likable. People like his story. People like him. And for him to go out and win on one of NASCAR's biggest stages and biggest tracks at Daytona is massive for that team, right? I don't necessarily know that is a playoff push that is going to push them really deep into it's not going to happen for them, right? They're just not where they need to be to contend for the championship compared to the likes of Ty Gibbs, Junior Motorsports, and their biggest competitors. It's definitely an opportunity for them to get a lot of attention, a lot of potential sponsorship for the rest of the season, next season. I don't know what their sponsorship situation is, but it's really good to see that amount of smaller drivers, especially think about some of those drivers, right? You mentioned Brandon Brown's been having some sponsorship issues. He's been in and out of the car, or maybe not yet been in and out of the car, but he was supposed to be out of the car for a few races. And, you have Ryan Vargas, he's been out of the car, and he's been very open on social media about how hard it's been for him. And he's kept his head down. He's been respectful of the decisions made over there at that organization. And, I think for a number of drivers to walk away with a finish like this was almost as good as winning for them. And to see that level of graciousness and appreciation for, a finish that might have been 6th or 7th or 8th or whatever is really rare. I feel like you don't really get a lot of guys who, they fight and they claw and they finish top 10, and it's like, my God, that was basically as good as winning. It was a long race. I feel like both races, really high attrition rate. We saw Austin Hill. Yeah, he had that problem, was able to get back to the front after crunching that nose up on pit road. He was a player, and I would expect him to be a player when they go back to Talladega, where he arguably should have won last time. Noah Gragson, really good plate racer. He was up at the front there. He got wrecked too. It just seems like I don't know if I have a little harder time attributing this to the win in your in system. This is not the regular season finale for the Xfinity Series. They're still going to have a handful of weeks and a handful of races to make things happen. But it is, in some sense, Daytona is still that last chance for a lot of drivers where it's their last opportunity to really have a say and a shot to get into the playoffs. I think maybe, Phil, you mentioned the mentality is maybe a little hypocritical because, we saw Austin Dillon, who's been really far back in points. He wins, he's in the playoffs, and a lot of people aren't really happy about it. And Jeremy Clements isn't really all that different. He's not been running the best this year. He's a little bit farther back in points. He's not in the playoffs on points, but he wins, and all of a sudden he's in and everybody's happy. What's the difference? I think the difference really is the level of competition. In the Cup Series this year, we've seen a lot of different winners, but we've also seen the drivers who can be consistent, right? Logano's been on a pretty consistent streak lately. Chase Elliott had those few weeks where he was 1-2, 1-2, back and forth. Reddick's run really good. You're right. We know the drivers who are really capable of running really good. And that playoff field, quite honestly, is a little bit watered down because you have 4 more cars, right? You have 4 more spots. But also with Cup, you have a lot of drivers who run every week, every single week. Xfinity, you're less likely to find that. There are, ever since I feel like the Cup drivers were told, you can't run full time, I feel like the number of part-timers and the amount of in and out of the cars in the Xfinity Series has, maybe doubled or tripled in that time since they imposed those restrictions. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think that's probably where it comes from, is that, in Cup, you really do want the best of the best out there because you know who the best of the best are because they run every single week, right? In Xfinity, you don't have guys who run every single week, right? Think about the 18 car this year, right? Bubba's been in there. Sammy Smith has been in there. There's been a few drivers kind of in and out of that 18 car. And the car is good, but it's still, the drivers really aren't that good. And they're not going to be in playoff contention. And, maybe from that, because you have less actually competitive drivers on the week to week, you're probably a little more open to seeing a driver who especially runs the full season on such a low budget, probably a little bit more open to being able to watch that happen. I think also part of that probably comes from, people may not take the Xfinity series as seriously because maybe they don't follow it as much or as seriously. I think probably for us that may not be the case, but I think it really boils down to a difference in mentality. Hopefully this race, if anything, proves to be a great shot in the arm for some of those little teams, whether it's, they go and find some sponsors, they, find a little bit of momentum that are going to, for Clements, maybe it carries him through a little bit of the playoffs, but for the other teams who aren't going to qualify, maybe it's something they can take back home and build on with whatever driver is going to be in their car. There's a lot of opportunity that comes from that, and there's a lot of attention that comes from this race in particular. So it's definitely good. I don't know. I was really tired. I'm really blanking out on a lot of what actually happened during the race. I wanted to go to bed, which is weird. I never want to go to bed until like 2 a.m. Yeah, Josh, you probably remember that more. You probably have more to speak on.
I didn't really have too much.
No, I remember the race too before Josh.
I mean, I was at a friend's house for a little party, but I didn't really watch the Xfinity race. Like, we were kind of just sitting around and talking, and I pulled my phone out and had like the last 10 laps or so of the Xfinity race. So I was kind of checking in every now and then I ended up kind of seeing the finish there on my phone, but I wasn't really watching too much of it. But I mean, I think you talked about the exposure it gives to the smaller teams in this series. Jeremy Clements, of course, not only does he get into the playoffs, but being in the playoffs brings that level of prestige to that team. Regardless of how they actually perform, the fact that they're a playoff team, they get extra media exposure leading up into the Xfinity playoffs. And then, of course, the first 3 weeks, they'll be talked about a lot on NBC and get that coverage. So that'll help their team get a little bit more exposure to potential sponsors that they can potentially sell themselves to and get secured funding, of course, get more employees and stuff like that. So that's a good thing. And I think same thing goes for the other teams, especially guys like Timmy Hill, Sage Karam, Ryan Vargas. Those guys, are either, going to be Xfinity veterans, or they're trying to make careers in stock car racing, and that gives them exposure to sponsorship as well. So there's a lot that benefits from a small team getting a super speedway top 10 that they can potentially help themselves be better on the other racetracks moving forward. But I think points wise as well. I think you talked about the Cup rule where with their Cup drivers can only run a certain amount of races now in this series, and I think that does affect the quality of the field to a certain extent, because now you have the Xfinity drivers kind of racing against each other most of the time, and that includes this race. Well, there really wasn't any Cup drivers in this race outside of Ricky Stenhouse and Ty Gibbs, so I guess is now a Cup driver, and AJ Allmendinger. There's not really any Cup drivers racing Xfinity or truck at Daytona now, obviously for injury reasons. So it kind of leads to a lack of depth here, and that you kind of see a different style of racing play out because you don't have a lot of the Cup drivers that know how to restrict relay players, and you have Xfinity guys that are inexperienced at drafting and don't really know when to make the moves that they need to make at the end of the race, and the point of saying that is, well, it kind of leads to like the top guys like AJ Allmendinger, Allgaier, Gregson, who've been around for a while and know how to plate race and how to draft and things like that. So the top of the standings, the guys that are top of the standings, they've had a lot of experience over the years, and they're able to kind of control the race a lot more than some of the these backmarker teams that end up there. But then, of course, on the other flip side of it, level of aggression leads up, and the guys that know what they're doing, they maybe do a little bit too much, and they don't really they start taking a little bit more chances and take themselves out, whereas guys at the bottom of the standings, the bottom half of the field, they're trying to preserve their cars because it's like the only car that they've got. And so when you only have like one or two cars in the shop, you got to preserve it, and they can race a little bit more conservatively, and then towards the end, once the fields thin themselves out, then they can go there and try to secure a top 10 finish or possibly go for the win there. But on the other hand of that, you have drivers that are trying to make the playoff standings right now, like Jeremy Clements, who's now locked himself in. I mean, other guys that could have won, that may have had a shot. Brandon Brown, who could have made it in. He's 15th in the standings right now. Could have made it in with this win. Anthony Alfredo is decently good super speedway racing, and Sheldon Creed, of course, had that issue with his chassis that they're probably going to be looking at later when he crashed. All those drivers are really good at, or can be good at super speedway racing, and have been there at the end in the past, or have had opportunities to go out and win. Of course, they have to try to do things to get up to the front or to lead or whatever, and they or get taken out in another thing that puts more pressure on them in the following weeks to try to make something happen. So I think for a guy like Sheldon Creed getting eliminated from this race, just a top 10 alone I think would have been helpful. Not getting crashed out, they would have been able to maybe close the gap or get closer to Ryan Sieg, who's 12th in the standings. So I think Sheldon Creed potentially could the following weeks, he could come out with a win or something like that at some of these later racetracks that are coming up before the Xfinity playoffs, or ends up this was his best chance. So I think for this series, it's a lot easier to tell who are the contenders when who can make things happen at this type of race in a super speedway race, compared to maybe the Cup Series, where there's a whole lot more volatility and a lot more depth in the field.
And that's what makes it what it is. And I mean, both you guys had great points in regards to Jeremy Clements going and getting that victory and how it lands relative to what we're dealing with on the Cup side. Now that we have a playoff field there, I mean, there's 2 races to go in the Xfinity Series season before they get to their playoff. Or 3 races actually: Darlington, Kansas, and Bristol. Their first playoff race will be at Texas, of all places, and then Texas, Talladega, and the Charlotte Roval. That is quite a random combination of races for sure. And that's something to see how that all lands out there. I mean, you have fuel mileage, even though with the stages it kind of goes away. It's still a long third stage at Kansas, but pace wise, you're going to figure it's going to be the Junior Motorsports, Gibbs, the big time teams. Darlington is a very short, one of the shortest races they have all year. And so, I mean, Ryan Ellis is running a Jeff Gordon 2001 theme on his car, so credit to him. This weekend, there's only 38 cars for 38 spots, so nobody's going to fail to qualify there. Bristol's going to be a little harder, so that's something that we will see here. 3 races to go for them, and then what goes on with that. So right now, trying to go and switch over here. We'll go and change it up a little bit to some of the news that took place this week. So Eric Almirola will be coming back at least for 2 years in the 10 car. It seems like him and Blickensderfer are getting along well, even though they missed the playoffs. But they'll be back together doing their thing in the Smithfield Ford number 10. I think a lot of us thought Ryan Preece was going there, but now I guess things are lining up to where Ryan Preece is waiting on when Kevin Harvick decides to quit. And he'll get the 4 car, which is a lot of pressure for him. But to be honest, I guess I figure the way he's built and the way he carries himself, he's ready for that energy. Now he has to convince the sponsors that Kevin Harvick has right now, like Busch, the Anheuser-Busch Company, and Jimmy John's, and all them other ones, that they should sponsor him to take over for a guy who's a legend. That's tough, but something we will see. Eric Almirola is going to be back. Kyle Busch, and that's the question. I figure, Greg Zipadelli said that for all intents and purposes, what's his name? Custer is going to be back in the 41 car. Custer's 27th, 28th in points in the Cup Series right now, and he's generally been irrelevant all year. He is 25th in points. My fault. But I'm going to put a preface here on 25th in points. Michael McDowell and Brad Keselowski both had enormous penalties based on whatever different issues with the car. So essentially, he'd be 27th. He'd be behind Harrison Burton, who's a rookie. Todd Gilliland is behind him. Ty Dillon, who's about to lose his job anyway. Corey LaJoie and Cody Ware. So amongst regulars, he'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. He'd be the 5th worst driver in the Cup Series. And you have an opportunity to get Kyle Busch. Essentially, his salary would probably be a little less, but you can go and get Kyle Busch. To me, if I'm Gene Haas, you decided to get Kurt Busch, 8 years ago, on the same pretense. But there's way more that comes with Kyle. Because not only do you get Kyle Busch, his energy drink, all the different businesses he is, Kyle Busch at the end of the day is a better driver than his older brother. That's just proven, and statistically, that's what it is. You get the fact that you can get Kyle Busch Motorsports into the fold, combine them with David Gilliland Racing, and make a Ford driver development program that could be insane. You have Kyle Busch with Tony Stewart and Kevin Harvick, who are 3 of the biggest names in motorsport and 3 of the biggest names over the past 20 years in NASCAR, and you put them together. How the hell does that not make sense to me? It makes sense to me. How does that not make sense? How does that not work business-wise? Since Gene Haas is willing to waste millions and billions of dollars running in Formula One and not being relevant, running in this series and your driver's 25th in points and you're funding it out of your pocket, it's basically pocket change. When you're a billionaire, I guess it doesn't matter. Or multimillionaire, it doesn't matter. Because you don't have to pay taxes because of all the goddamn loopholes that exist in our tax code. But it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. It sounds like Kyle Busch is going to be back at Toyota, which is to be, for all intents and purposes, and David Wilson's thoughts on during this weekend at Daytona basically speaks to that fact. Or he's going to Chevy. Now, where would he go at Chevy? There's really 2 options when it comes to, there's 3. One is Colleague, which everybody's been talking about for a while because Matt Colleague is a businessman. He's a guy who's willing to do dice rolls. He wants the big hit. He wants the big catch. That's the perfect combination, honestly, because Matt Colleague's got money to give him. He could give him a contract. But he also wants to know that it'll fit his spot. Will Kyle Busch assimilate into the Colleague realm? That's the biggest question. The money of being able to fund Kyle Busch and put him in a Cup car and do what he has to do is not an issue because Colleague's been able to find money and he has his own businesses and all these guys. Kyle can go and put his energy drink on the car and all that. That's there. I guess Celsius, there might be some issues with that and maybe some, but that's something that we may or may not know. RCR is the other one. You're losing your big dog in Tyler Reddick. Austin's going to keep his ride no matter what, even though he sucks. I mean, he won on Sunday, but he still sucks. And he's 4 feet tall. And
that's the reality TV fit for Kyle Busch if he wants to go make a career in reality TV.
I mean, his wife wants one. I mean, his wife wants to have a reality TV gig. I mean, when they originally met, she had enormous bolt-ons and her tits were a foot ahead of her, but, and she got her college degree or got her master's and all that, and then had some illness issues and then trying to make a kid and all that and got rid of them titties. And, but RCR, if they really want relevancy, if they're not going to sell out to Junebug, which I think is the best option, to be honest, you go and have Kyle Busch in the fold, which is essentially the closest thing we've had to Dale Earnhardt since Dale Earnhardt. And based on our listenership, nobody's going to be going and getting in an uproar because I said that, but it's the truth. Kyle Busch is the closest thing to Dale Earnhardt we've had since Dale Earnhardt in regards to driving ability, being an asshole, and driving through people. So he would be the perfect fit for the 31. They should renumber that goddamn car. It bothers me that it's the 8 car. It makes no sense that it's the 8 car. It should be the 31 car. The 8 car is just random, but to me it's Junior, which in its own right, if Junior was taking over the team, okay, fine. You have the 3 and the 8. It's perfect. It's family, lineage, and symmetry. But the 8 car makes no sense for that team. It should be the 31 car. They can't do 2 in the Cup Series, but 21 they can't do in the Cup Series either, but 31 works. It should be a 31 car. There's good years. They had good times there. With that, hopefully they'll do that when Austin Hill takes that car over, if it's Austin Hill. But Joe, there's a lot of news. I'll let you go over it because you are the journalist. You are the one that covers the sport, and there's a lot of news topics. So you give your thoughts on it, and Josh, you can go and give your thoughts on everything that went on this past weekend and what it may mean for things as we get on the rest of this year and into 2023.
All right. So, I don't know who decided that this week was going to be a great week to start blowing everything up, but a lot happening both on the actual hard news side as well as the speculation side. So we'll start with some of the hard news. The first, and I think probably the fan favorite announcement, honestly, that came out of this weekend was the fact that Craftsman is back, right? We found out earlier this year that Camping World was no longer going to be the title sponsor. They have sponsored the series since 2009 in some capacity. They did a few years where Marcus Lemonis wanted to switch it to the Gander Outdoor and RV Truck series before replacing it with Camping World again. So they have been around ever since Craftsman left, and now we're getting Craftsman again. I'll be honest, based off of what I was hearing, I wasn't shocked, and I think only because I had been hearing that Craftsman was possibly in on these talks. I have seen, they have definitely, I remember when I was a kid, you'd go into the Sears at the mall over here, and there was an entire section of Craftsman tools, circa 2007, 8, 9, and then, they fell out of the sport, and 09 was the first year of the Camping World Truck Series, and, you get to, the early 2010s, maybe around 2013, 14, I don't ever remember seeing Craftsman at that point. They just fizzled out. Over the past few years, I have noticed Stanley Black & Decker, the parent company, they've put a lot of money into sponsoring cars. Most notably, Christopher Bell has had some sponsorship from them. Denny Hamlin had Craftsman on for a few races. They then began
Edwards and Suarez.
Sponsoring. Yeah. I forgot about that. That's totally, yeah.
They were when Edwards had his deal with Aris, which was Suarez's sponsor. It was the Aris car, and then they had Stanley Black & Decker on the car. That's like when he went and moved Kyle at Richmond a few years ago. He had a Stanley car. Yeah, it was it was an Xfinity car. But he had Stanley cars and he won in those.
Yeah, but specifically with the Craftsman brand, I noticed it's really been in the last 2 to 3 years. And they've put some money into Haley Deegan this year. They've sponsored multiple races with Deegan. And so it's funny. I feel like in some sense, we're in this part this time in our sport where there are so many new things. We are going to so many new tracks. We are trying these things we've never tried before, right? A few years ago, you would have told me NASCAR is going to race on a quarter mile in the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. I would have laughed at you, and I don't know what I would have done after, but I probably would have laughed for a good while, right? Or if you told me we were going to run a street course, I probably would have laughed at you. And look, now both of those things are happening in back-to-back years. At the same time, there is this almost resurgence of history that's happening, right? Think about it. In the past few years, we've gotten 2 Darlington races for the first time in almost 15 years. We've got all these beautiful throwback paint schemes to pay tribute to the past. We're getting North Wilkesboro back, not necessarily for NASCAR, but that's not really the point. It's the point of getting that piece of track, that piece of history, that piece of racing history. That track had been around for so long, it was on the cusp of getting eaten up by nature, and we got it back, and largely in peace with Dale Jr. and Marcus Smith. And now again, here's something we're getting, what is old is new again, right? The Craftsman Truck Series. So it's really exciting. I know it's like, it's kind of silly to get worked up about it, but it's really exciting to see the sponsorship interest for Craftsman to come out from Black and Decker to come out and say, hey, we're going to invest this money because we see the potential, right? I think it probably worried a lot of people. There were a lot of knocks on the Fox coverage. Marcus Smith started getting involved with SRX, and I think there was probably a lot of worry that this was going to happen. I think got to a point where it was inevitable. Marcus Smith came out and said, hey, this is the deal. And, I remember when Monster signed on after Sprint left, I don't think we knew the series title name until the new year. So to have something locked down this early is a really healthy sign for that series, where I think there maybe have been some concerns. Moving away from Craftsman, we were also told that Daniel Suarez is going to return to Trackhouse for 2023. Now, this is a 1-year contract. I kind of don't like that move of just being a 1-year contract. He won a race earlier this season. I know over time, contracts have gotten a lot shorter and shorter to the point where we're now really kind of signing between 1 and 3 years for the most part. I know some of the bigger names and some of the people who sell a lot of merchandise are getting these really long deals. Chase Elliott is signed through 2026 or 7 or something, and Napa is signed with that team through 2027 or 8. But it's good for him. He has been one of the drivers who nobody's really discussed with contract year. I don't know if maybe they've kind of had something on lock, if this was an option. I feel like if it was an option, that would have been disclosed. But regardless of whatever happened, Suarez is going to be back with that team. That's a great sign. He has definitely had a much healthier career over there. It's been visible in his attitude. It's been visible, especially this year, in his driving on the track. He's someone who I'm looking for to continue to grow and to continue to, gain and be a little more consistent, to the point where maybe we can see him run very similarly to how he ran with the Gibbs cars back in the Xfinity series in 2015, 2016. So that's really exciting for him. A little bit of crew chief news. Greg Ives is going to depart from the number 48 team following this season. He did mention he will still have a role in racing. I do believe he actually mentioned it will be that he's going to be at Hendrick, not in a crew chief role. He was an engineer with Hendrick and JRM for a really long time in Cup and Xfinity, respectively. He was the crew chief for Chase Elliott back in 2014 when Elliott won 3 races and the championship. He was then promoted, did crew chiefing in 2015, 16, and 17 with Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Alex Bowman during that time as well. Alex Bowman was filling in a lot of the races in 16. So he did a handful of seasons with crew chiefing over there. Stayed on with the 88 team when Alex Bowman came on full time in 2018, 19, 20. Stayed with Bowman when they moved to the 48 last year in 21 and for this year in 22. Honestly, his track record is it's not super great. You look at the years and the engineering years, and yeah, those track records are great. But as far as once he actually moved in a Cup, he had the one good year with Junior. And yes, he and Bowman definitely had a great year last year, and they had a good 2020 playoffs. But for the most part, I think Alex Bowman, he's kind of been the redheaded stepsister of that group, of the Hendrick Motorsports group, and they really do need to find better consistency. I don't pin that 100% on Greg Ives, but a crew chief in that situation, regardless of who they are, whether it's Chad Knaus, Ray Enverham, I don't care who you are, you do need to take some of that responsibility. It is part of your job. I know you're not the one driving the car, but it is ultimately, you have one of the biggest hands in the pot when you're making the cars. So no crew chief has been announced to replace. Personally, if I had to take a guess, Noah Gragson is leaving the 9 team in Xfinity to go over and run the 42 next year. Justin Alexander, is that name right?
I feel like Justin Alexander was at RCR.
Justin Alexander's in the 3 car. Who the hell's the guy at the?
Isn't it Mike Bum or?
No. I think it is Justin Alexander, because I know he used to crew chief with Austin Dillon.
J-Ski.
See, I didn't know something, and now everybody's Googling.
It comes in handy, Dr. Google.
It's Luke Lambert.
Luke Lambert. Okay, so Luke Lambert was
crew chief of the 31 car.
Newman, right? Okay, so I had the wrong driver then, because Alexander at one point he was doing with 3 car, but yeah. So I could honestly see him. Because Luke Lambert does have some Cup experience over there with RCR. I could see him getting promoted and possibly going up and crew chiefing with Alex Bowman. You know, it'll take some time, right? They're going to have to figure some things out. The chemistry, the communication between those two would be something major. That would just be my guess. That's pure speculation. But to me, it makes sense. Probably the last thing that I'll say that was really hard news before I kind of get into some of the more speculaty stuff. Zane Smith is going to return to front row in 2023. He's going to race across the board in the 3 major series. So he will be full-time trucks. That will still be his points series where he won the regular season championship this year. He's also going to run select Xfinity Series races. It was not mentioned with what team. Front Row Motorsports does not have an Xfinity team. I don't imagine they'll be opening one for this. And then he's going to make select Cup starts, including an attempt to begin the Daytona 500 at the start of the year, most likely in the 36 car, because I don't believe they're getting Gilliland or McDowell out of their cars in Cup. So that's really exciting for him. You know, I was kind of thinking maybe he was someone, because I do believe he's got some history with JRM, maybe late models. I was kind of thinking maybe that's somebody that Junior wanted to pounce on to replace Noah Gragson in the 9 car. So, you know, Zane Smith, he was good with GMS, right? He finished very well in the playoffs both times, made Final Four twice in 2 years. He has been great with Front Row. They've lost some of their momentum and their head of steam that they had earlier this season, now that they're a few races deep in the playoffs. But they're definitely a championship caliber team, that's no question. I think having the Xfinity and Cup starts as well help gain more experience. I think that'll help him in trucks. And I think you'll see he'll be someone who can elevate that Front Row team to the next level. Almirola, you know, his deal, we know, is 2 years with Smithfield. Phil, I kind of agree with you with what you had mentioned. You know, you have Gene Haas, this multimillionaire who, I mean, he paid basically for most of Kurt's years over there. And then he paid for a year for Suarez. You know, he's invested a lot of money into racing, and you know, I feel like it's weird to me. I would have to get Kyle Busch on my team. If I were Gene Haas, I probably would have told Custer, you need to go back to Xfinity. You're not winning. You backed into a win for the most part is what happened at Kentucky, because you had a good restart late. Almirola, you know, he kind of made his decision, it sounded like, and then maybe kind of unmade a decision because of he found some balance. I would have pushed really hard if I were him, and if I were Tony Stewart as well, because they possibly lost Larson because Ford wouldn't let Stewart pursue after the incident in 2020. So, you know, I would not want to lose another talent like that to anyone. I don't care if it's a small team, a big team, whoever. I wouldn't want to lose another talent, an opportunity like that. Kyle will sell. Somebody will sponsor him. And worst comes to worst, if, you know, he's got some open races, throw a hot car, right? Try and get Smithfield to throw them some money for some sponsorship for Kyle. I would have rather them sold a charter, had Almirola retire, and Custer go back to Xfinity to get Kyle in that car, because I think that would be better for Stewart-Haas Racing short-term and long-term than having both of those drivers back.
Having three drivers instead of four, consolidating your team, only having the one Xfinity program right now, that makes a lot of sense. I agree with you.
I just, to me, that would have been the better business decision. Now, it's totally possible there's something behind the scenes in the inner workings that would have further restricted Busch from going to that team than what everybody knows. So, I won't be pretend to be an expert like that. But to me, it's weird that all of a sudden, a few weeks ago, we hear Almirola is interested in returning, and Custer, we were all kind of wondering what's up, and now we know that both of these drivers are back. I really just, to me, okay, Gene, you do you. I'd love to know Stewart's thoughts. I'd love to know what he was thinking, because I know he would be honest about it, and I'd imagine he probably wants Kyle. But so yeah, it seems like right now the big three teams are going to be Joe Gibbs or 2311. So I guess two, Joe Gibbs 2311 for Toyota, or Chevrolet, where he would go to RCR or Kaulig, like you mentioned. Phil, though, I disagree with what you said. I don't think he's going to stay at Toyota. I think he's going to go to Kaulig. I really do, and here's why. So Joe Gibbs, clearly, if Joe Gibbs was flexible on the sponsorship price, this deal would have already been done. It would have been done months ago when Oracle said, hey, we'll throw you money to sponsor that 18 car next year. That deal fell through, most likely because of some internal working on Joe Gibbs' end, where he said, hey, we want X, and then Oracle dropped, right?
Which also fits with Martin Truex Jr., who has all his sponsors that he's been bringing across the table for like 20 years, which is Bass Pro Shops and the like. But outside of Bass Pro Shops and the sponsors he brought from the 78 car, he's getting sponsors he needs. They don't have all the races filled. Oracle would have been a sponsor at $25 million because they're sponsoring Red Bull in Formula One, the Red Bull Formula One team, which is going to win a world championship, which would make me puke, but whatever. They're the main title sponsor for the Red Bull Formula One team. They got money to burn. They have $30 million.
Absolutely. They may not see the market value in, right? Because they're not involved in NASCAR really in any capacity, especially like they're involved with F1, right? Where they're on two cars over there, the team cars for Red Bull. So yeah, it's definitely possible it was Oracle. But to me, based off of things that Kyle was saying earlier in the season, hearing about the $25 million, hearing about, maybe it's not been so flexible, and also seeing the body language, right? I mean, think about Kyle Busch this weekend. I saw Kyle Busch with smiles on his face. I don't really know, other than winning the last time I saw him smile. And he was separated from Gibbs, right? Physically separated. At Pocono, Gibbs came and patted him on the back, and Kyle didn't even bat an eye. To me, there's something else going on over there, and I would find it really hard to say that Gibbs and Busch are going to be back together. The reason I rule out 2311 is because if Toyota was so truly intent on keeping Kyle Busch, they would have pitched money in, and it would be known that they would be willing to sponsor Kyle himself. Their logo is going to be on his car. That has not happened, right? We've seen with Chevrolet when they sponsor drivers. We've seen with Ford when they have some sponsorship with some drivers. A little less common with Ford, but Toyota, that hasn't really been a thing. How desperate are they to keep Kyle? To me, if they're not willing to throw some sponsorship, they're not desperate enough to where I would believe Kyle would stay with Toyota. So now we have the talk of, okay, we have RCR and we have Kaulig. RCR, it seems at this point, will keep Reddick for 2023. They don't have an additional charter. And, with the likes perhaps of Junior maybe doing something, and again, it's not confirmed, with the likes of Junior maybe trying to do something, maybe they try and have a joint venture for a few years, maybe Junior just buys out the entire team, it would seem a little less likely, not because I think Junior would be against it, but because once Reddick leaves, I would feel like a driver who's already with Chevrolet and possibly already with JRM would more likely ascend to that seat than Kyle Busch. Matt Collig, I think, wants his truck team. He has been open about wanting to expand. He mentioned IMSA. I believe he mentioned maybe GT. And he had said something about trucks at one point.
What's his name? His, I forget who's
Chris Rice.
Chris Rice said, "Oh, we want to expand into trucks. We want to expand into IMSA." Well, trucks is Kyle Busch, because if it wasn't for Kyle Busch Motorsports, and a couple other in the Dorsons and a couple other people, the Truck Series would be dead. The GT Series, Kyle Busch ran a Lexus in the Rolex 24. He was part of the Vassar Sullivan team at the Rolex 24. So, conveniently, we want to expand into, which means, we want to get a Corvette because we want to be OG like that, which even Hendrick hasn't done that. Matt Collig's like, yeah, I want to call Doug Feehan and whoever the hell's at GM. Yeah, we want one of them Corvettes. We want to run it in GTD because we have a guy in AJ Allmendinger who's an OG. I mean, the problem is with Collig, fuck the GT. Put AJ Allmendinger in a prototype car, even though he's getting fat. His midsection, he's like Juan Pablo Montoya. He's let it go. Same way as I let it go, but the difference is those guys are athletic and they're legitimate great race car drivers. I've let myself go because I'm never going to be athletic and I'm just a bowler. Those guys are good. They have as the freaking kettle's going off. The fact is, they could call Juan Pablo Montoya and his son Sebastian Montoya, have AJ Allmendinger as their third driver, and run a Cadillac prototype in the GTP category. They'd have something there. No, but the Corvette thing's fine. That's great. Whatever. It doesn't matter. You're not going to win overall. AJ Allmendinger wants to win overall. And that's AJ Allmendinger and Matt Collig are BFFs. The reality is, I was thinking about this too recently. If AJ Allmendinger was running for Cup points, he would have been in the mix to actually make the playoff. He would have been way better than Justin Haley. He would have been way better than a lot of these guys. He could have won himself into this playoff, and he would have been a contender.
Yeah.
Because that 16 car has been better than the 31 car this year, even though the 31 car has the stability of the full season. They have, what's his name? Trent Owens, who's been suspended, I think, at least twice this year. And Trent Owens is one of the best crew chiefs. And Trent Owens, another guy you guys, Junior wanted. He didn't get him. I don't know how, but he didn't get him. His stepfather is the great Barry Dodson. The reality is Trent Owens is one of the best crew chiefs. He won for Eric Almirola at Daytona years ago, too.
And don't forget, in particular to that 16 car, the only reason that's a chartered car with a full-time, week to week is because there's 3 drivers in there. One of those drivers is not going to be there next year. No, Gregson's out. He's going to the 42. To me, this is a great way to get your truck team to potentially have the money to now run trucks, run Xfinity, run Cup, maybe dump some money into expanding in the next 2 years into some of your other non-NASCAR ventures. You get a great driver. The sponsors will be there. Matt Collig, he'll negotiate something. He'll find something. You do have Rowdy, you do have Celsius, and that may be a problem. But I think for Kyle Busch, it can be overcome, right? The level of talent that you would be getting. He'll win you a race. It may not be immediate. He'll win you something. And, knowing now that you don't even have to buy a second charter, right? You could just put him in the 16, right? Put Kyle in the 16. You can have Haley or whoever run the second car. Everybody else back to Xfinity. And maybe if AJ wants to venture out and he's still in Xfinity, he can run those GT3s, right? So to me, there's a lot to gain for Collig if Kyle Busch is at your team. So if I'm Matt Collig, I want Kyle Busch. And it almost seems like, based on the rumors, Matt Collig is the one who wants Kyle Busch the most. That may not correlate to anything. That may end up being something. But only time will tell. But I would have to imagine something's got to get announced soon, because to me, it seems like this talk has affected Kyle's performance. I know he won a stage this week. He crashed out.
He's admitted that it's a distraction.
Yeah. So if I'm Kyle, I want to get this thing squared up as soon as possible so I can go race for a championship. I'll tell you right now, on my bracket, I have him out after the round of 12. So If he announces something, maybe that
really?
changes.
Interesting. Something that we have
Wow.
to go
We
and
have
look
to go
forward
over
to here
later.
shortly.
Oops.
No, I mean it's a good transition into later, but I mean, in my opinion, I think you're right about colleague. I was thinking about what you're talking is, colleague, gets Kyle Busch, and then they also will get Kyle Busch Motorsports, and not sure how the logistics of the the business side of that will work out. Will they just absorb Kyle Busch Motorsports and become Colleague Racing, or Kyle Busch Motorsports in the truck series, and then Busch has like some type of equity, or is it similar to how Dale Jr. when he went to Hendrick, Hendrick became partner in the Xfinity operation with Junior Motorsports, and they gave them more resources.
So Josh randomly dropped out there. Just going to give him a second to.
Gosh, what are you doing?
I don't know what
I don't know what you did there.
I did not do anything. It's like Discord just crashed on me.
Your video isn't showing, so your sound is on.
I can't see either.
Oh,
You're
wow.
back.
This is
You're loading. There we go.
Somehow or another, I had Joe blocked before we ever started. I had you blocked like both visually and audio before you ever got on, which is the reason why it didn't work. But
Okay.
I don't know what happened there, but that was
do your thing.
Yeah, no, it's back now, but just like all of a sudden just restarted, or an update like applied or something. I have no idea, but what I was saying though is like look at because I think Kyle Busch is going to be the hottest free agent in NASCAR since Dale Jr. back in 2007, and there's a lot of options for Jr. Could he gone to Gibbs, Richard Childress Racing, and then Hendrick came along and picked him up. So this is a little bit of a similar deal, although Colleague is not as it's not a legacy team like the other teams were for Junior back in 2007. So for Kyle Busch, opportunity for someone else to become a partner in Kyle Busch Motorsports, he can continue to expand and grow his program down there, and then also have some type of equity into the team, whatever shape or form, or ownership or something like that, and then allows Kyle Busch to run his truck team. They have Chevy has another pipeline for talent in the truck series. Then they have more drivers there, and then also for his son, because Kyle Busch said his plans for his son to be able to start racing in the truck series when he's 16. So I don't know when that'll be, in like about 8 or 9 years from now, and then Kyle Busch will run for a couple more years in the truck series until his son's like 18, and that'll be it for him. I think racing period. So I think that's part of the discussion there, and I think from that perspective, colleague racing makes the most sense in everything. I mean, so that's what it probably will look like. I mean, for the other teams, they may not have the resources or the funding to be able to do it, because Stewart Haas, it's a super team, but then maybe there's not as much maneuverability as far as the ownership goes, and that may be more of a short term deal or something like that, whereas the colleague one gives you more of a long-term flexibility. And the same thing with RCR. They're it seems like they're more on the consolidation side than they are on the expansion side right now. So I think for that, it makes more sense to go to colleague racing for Kyle Busch. So would expect that announcement to come soon, probably by the end of the month. And people say that, you guys are talking about like deals usually would be happening right now, and they would have re-signed him, and that's true. But then it's also true that we have seen some late or early fall announcements, like Junior going to Hendrick. That didn't happen until like September, or well, actually it was June 2007 when they made that announcement. But I don't think they announced the full 88 sponsorship platform and unveiling until like September 2007, if I remember correctly. And then Kyle Busch wasn't announced as JGR until September 2007. That
was during the Charlotte race. Yeah, probably around that area. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's lots of background in announcing new driver lineups in the fall. So that's something to consider for Kyle Busch and likely there. And yeah, I don't think there's going to be any conflict with Celsius and Rowdy. I think maybe there might be enough sponsorship from Rowdy where they can just like cut ties with Celsius and just take Rowdy. Maybe there's enough business there. I don't know, because they are kind of in the same platform, similar to how Rowdy and Monster couldn't be on the same team because Monster and them compete in the same brand space in the same marketplace. So that might be something to think about, but I don't think it's a big issue at all.
I'm just here for Rico Abreu to get in a truck again, just because he's my spirit animal. But that's beside the point. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we'll see if that ever does happen. But yeah, I think, the other thing you brought up earlier, Daniel Suarez going to Trackhouse for 2023, and you talked about it's only a 1-year deal, right? But I do remember him saying that I think they had the new TV contract in mind with that 1-year deal, where after the 1-year deal, they'll be able to renegotiate and sign a better deal, maybe long term. And it's just a 1 year, which is risky because things can happen, performance can drop off, and then they say, "Hey, we're not going to re-sign you," or the 1-year deal happens, and then another team comes along and says, "Hey, we want to sign Daniel Suarez." So there's a little bit of risk, of course, with only 1 year on both sides of that with Trackhouse and Daniel Suarez. But I think, the bigger play, and of course with the amount of years on the deal, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and beyond, I think the big catalyst for that is the TV deal. Whenever they figure out how to work that out, of course, there's discussion of how to distribute more money to the teams, how to distribute more money back to the drivers to try to kind of reset the business model, because of course the teams aren't maybe getting the best deal when it comes to the TV and advertising side of things, getting that kind of revenue sharing like we see in other sports leagues, although this is a little bit different, and with NASCAR, with most teams being independent contractors and not actual franchises like the other teams in other sports leagues. So that's something to consider as well. So we'll have to see how that deal plays out, and who the media outlets that would be covering NASCAR in the future, if they change television providers or whatnot, if CBS comes back into the fold, if ESPN comes back into the fold, things like that, we'll have to see. So, I think that's all thoughts I have. I mean, Greg Ives retiring and going back to, going to a desk job at Hendrick was probably a good move. I think he was a decent crew chief. You had that one good year with Dale Jr. in 2015, and then things kind of fell off from there. I think, they had a good 16 to start out with until Junior started crashing, and eventually his concussions got to him, and then wasn't really good after that, and was kind of decent with Alex Bowman until now. But I think a lot of their issues have been Hendrick overall falling off, because when Greg Ives came in to the 88 car, he was good, but Hendrick overall was good, and now they're still not the best team in Hendrick, and they are the team as a whole is a lot more successful, but still done a decent job. So we'll have to see who comes in to replace Alex Bowman, or somebody might be replacing Alex Bowman, but who's going to replace possibly that too, but who's going to replace Greg Ives for the 88 crew chief role there? Yeah,
when it comes to what Greg Ives did, I compare him a lot to Letarte, but Letarte, the difference that he had is he had Jeff Gordon still at the back end of his prime, blew one championship in 2007, which at the end of the day, when you consider what Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus were, I guess you can kind of throw it out. Steve Letarte went and saved Dale Jr.'s career, and he had 2 great years in 14 and 15. And that's what essentially is what made him a TV guy. He's like, oh shit, I just figured out a way to make the most popular driver. I gave him a career after all these years when he was irrelevant at Hendrick. I'm not going to do better than this. I'm going to go to TV. Like Larry McReynolds, God bless him, he's become a, quote, America's crew chief. If you really dig into his career after he left Robert Yates Racing in 1996, when he was part of Ernie Irvin's return after his horrendous crash. And he won 2 races, finished 10th in points. His career wasn't that great. The only thing he did was help Dale Earnhardt win the Daytona 500. But let's be fair. Dale Earnhardt could drive a freaking radio flyer around Daytona and win. That's beside the point. I mean, I could have been, and it was 1998, right? So I was 14 years old. I think so. Yeah, was it 13? Yeah, 13. I could have crew chief Dale Earnhardt with that car, and I could have won him the Daytona 500. But the fact is, Larry McReynolds did all his work with the Robert Yates Racing Texas 28 car with Davey and Ernie. Did it with the 26 car with Ricky Rudd. I think Brett Bodine as well. Yeah, he helped Brett Bodine win his one and only win there in 1990, but everybody remembers his time with Ricky Rudd. And then he's like, oh yeah, I should go to TV. And that was a good move. It's the same thing as what Steve Letarte did. Greg Ives is like, yeah, I've had this career. It's good, not great. Kind of is like Wally Dallenbach in that sense. And he's like, I'm still going to have a job at Hendrick Motorsports. If I want to do TV, I can do it. But it's like, I can be home. I can be with my family. There's something to be said about that. I mean, him and Bowman haven't really done a whole lot. To be fair, him and Earnhardt didn't really do much after that first year. Ives was more a product of Clyde, and I've always wondered if he had went with Clyde and he was connected with him, what would have happened instead of Alan Gustafson being that guy because it was a 24 car and he was connected to him. Because the fact is, him and Elliott didn't do a whole lot for a few years. They didn't win. There was a long losing streak with Chase Elliott before he became what he is now. I was always I would say this on the show, like, I wonder if Greg Ives and Chase were together, would that have been better than him and Alan Gustafson? Because the fact is, Gustafson would have been moved somewhere along the line. He might have been with Kyle Larson instead of what's his name that's with Kyle Larson. The Hendrick has resources. That's just the way it is. So the fact that Greg Ives is going to retire, all right, God bless him. All right, he's going to get off the road. Okay. We already brought up the 9 car because there's going to be a whole, I think that 9 car, what we see next year, is going to be a totally new team. They have the 88 to 17 program. That's a Hendrick program. There's going to be some conglomeration of people. And I think Kevin Mendering might end up being the crew chief on the 9 car next year with whoever it is, whether it's Carson Hocevar, whether it's insert name here, but that car is going to be there. But they're going to put more emphasis on Mayer, on Allgaier, and on Josh Berry for next year in the Xfinity Championship. And that 9 car is going to essentially become a R&D situation, even though that's a car that's seen people win championships, multiple drivers win championships, being Clyde, being Reddick, Byron, until we have the current guy that's in there, Cocaine Gregson, and he hasn't won yet, but he might have a chance. So we will see what comes of all of that. I'm glad as an old school guy, Craftsman Truck Series is back. It's great. I'll sign for that all day because I look at it as a Craftsman Truck Series. Now that, Sears is basically going down the toilet, as a guy who used to work for Sears as a mechanic, they were going down the toilet 17 years ago when I first started with them, and now they're going down the toilet, and I work with people at Lowe's, and they have Craftsman tools there, and having Craftsman Truck Series, I guess their parent company wants them out there, so they have the good money there. It's good. It's good business. It's a good way to do things. Craftsman Truck Series, the right way to go. I always like, Joe, you brought up when you were going to Sears. I remember when they originally came out in 1995, and it was the NASCAR Super Truck Series presented by Craftsman, and you'd go to Sears, and they had the diecast there, and I bought diecasts, and I still have them here. I took them out of the box mistakenly, but I had I had trucks from back in the day. I took medical tape and I put the medical tape over the nose like we're qualifying them. I try to dress them up properly. That's my young buck self back in the early days of the truck series when I was a young boy, and now we're 27 years into the truck series because it was in 95, so 5 and 22 or 27 years. Yeah, 27 years in the truck series, and still with it. It's been rendered into a ride buyer's paradise, but I'll always be a fan of the truck series no matter what, even though they've fucked it up. Okay, so yeah, we went over everything in Daytona and all the news. Zane Smith being kept at, before we get into Darlington, Zane Smith getting that contract renewal and being kept at Front Row Motorsports speaks a lot to what Bob Jenkins and what they want to do. They have Todd Gilliland. He's part of their future for multiple reasons. He's part of their future. But Zane Smith, he was a NASCAR Next guy. He was part of Junior Motorsports. He was part of Chevy, their whole program, GMS. But they let him go because their truck program wasn't their main thing. They were committed to the Cup side, and they got Gren Enfinger. So they were like, okay, we're not committed to the truck side, which is proof positive based on what their results are on the truck series. Now that they don't have anybody in the Cup playoffs, Eric Jones, of course, getting wrecked, maybe we'll see Gren Enfinger have some extra support too. But in regards to Zane Smith, he's legitimate, and Ford wants him to be a guy that can make it. And the fact that they've committed to him and he's going to make his Daytona 500 debut more than likely in February, and they're going to have a multi-program a la Ryan Newman going back about 20 years. It speaks to where they're committed to. And it also speaks to if Ford was like, hey, we want him and we'll go and do whatever, that's a big deal. I mean, who knows? Maybe Zane Smith goes and wins this truck championship. The fact is he's been one of the best drivers, if not the best driver in the truck series. He's had a rough patch right now, but it makes sense. He has a rough patch right now in the round of 8. He could even have a rough patch theoretically in a round of 6. He has enough points to give him the leverage to have that, because more than likely he's going to make the Final Four. But, I mean, getting into the whole playoff thing we talk about, I think he should be favored anyway. And he's finished second in this points battle twice in this format. If he doesn't win this championship, it'd be crazy, but, you know, he's in a position to do it. Ford wants him to make something happen. He's a guy that can make something happen, and he's somebody they want. And the fact that Front Row got ahead of it because he is a free agent, I'm sure they got ahead of it because they know that Junior was going to call him. Kelly, Dale Jr., freaking Mike, whatever that loser, they were all going to call him. They're going to be like, hey, you want to drive a car that 3 drivers that have won the championship have won? If they had lost him to Chevy, the 38 truck team's gone. That's essentially what it is, because they're connected to the Todd Gilliland program. That's part of where that whole connection is with my Kyle Busch theory with trying to get to Stewart Haas to make Ford more relevant within the truck series and Xfinity. They've hedged. And so we'll see what happens with Zane Smith. I think there's a lot of potential there on the Ford side, considering there are not a lot of Ford trucks or Ford Mustangs in the Xfinity series. So let's transition into the Xfinity race this weekend. The Sport Clips Haircuts VFW Help a Hero 200. Oh my goodness, that is quite a horrible name for a race. Not
It's
because
a
of what
mouthful.
yeah, that's why. It's not a good one to go and say just for the sake of saying it, unless you're paid way more money than I am, which is nothing. If they paid me with beer, I might have said it better with more energy. Former guest on the show, Dawson Cram, is going to make an attempt with Emerald Gase Racing with a new sponsor with B Water. So he'll be able to make the show. So credit to him, credit to his family. They're great people there. So support the 35 car. They'll be going and running the show there. Yeah, I mean, we have Ty Dillon will be in the 02 car. Tommy Joe Martin's in the 5 for BJ McLeod. Chad Fincham in the 13. Larson in the Hendrick 17. Hamlin in the 18 is one Xfinity start for the year. All right, so I'm just going to go say it. I'm picking Denny Hamlin. John Hunter in the 26, Dawson Cram 35, Josh Williams for Mario Goslin in the 36. He'll be running. Ryan Ellis in the Jeff Gordon throwback. Stephen Parsons in the 45. Ross Chastain in the 48. Chris Wright in the 68. And Brandon Brown in the 78 for BJ McLeod. So I already made my pick. I picked Denny Hamlin. My wild card is Sheldon Creed, who has shown over time he's done good at Darlington. He is a guy that can run on rough and loose surfaces because he's an off-roader. Denny Hamlin's a Darlington specialist. I go back 18 years ago when he made his Xfinity Busch Series debut. Nobody knew who the fuck he was, and he qualified and finished in the top 10. Denny Hamlin, and that's what kind of opened eyes to a lot of people, and now we know what he is. He runs this race every year and always seems to figure out a way to run up front. And Sheldon Creed's a guy that needs a win. And if he made the playoffs, he'd be trouble. Because we talked about Austin Hill. You guys talked about Austin Hill. RCR is good. They're not as good as they've been in their heyday, but they're good. And Sheldon Creed needs that time to figure out a car or figure out a series. He did it in ARCA and became an alien, won an ARCA championship. He did it in trucks. He figured it out. He put himself in a position. He won a Truck Series championship. He's that good. People consider him a sort of ride buyer. He's not a ride buyer. He's like Robbie Gordon 2.0. He is raw. He is really, really good. It's not my obvious fandom talking. The guy is that good. Richard Childress wouldn't have gotten him if he didn't have that talent. Whalen Engineering, who is a great big sponsor from the Northeast, wouldn't have put their money up if they didn't think this guy could drive. So Larson to win, or not Larson, Hamlin to win. Sheldon Creed as my wild card. Josh, who are your picks for this weekend in the Xfinity Series at Darlington?
I mean, you said it right there. At the end, you leaked it out. You're reading me, I guess. Pick Young Money, Kyle Larson, in the number 17 HendrickCars.com Chevy to go out and win the Xfinity race. He's been good at Darlington in the past. Of course, last year in the Cup, should have won in the spring and in the fall, I think. And he's been successful in terms of top tens and laps led. This is a Kyle Larson type of track. So yeah, I think he can pull it out here in Xfinity and win this race. I think for a wild card, I'm gonna go with Brandon Jones, which may be more of a safe bet as far as a wild card, but he hasn't really done too much this year. He's won a race this year at Martinsville. He's won at Darlington in the past, but he's hasn't really been too much up front compared to previous years in this series. So I'm going to go with Brandon Jones as my wild card here in the Xfinity Series this weekend.
How about you, Joe? So we picked both the Cup guys here.
You guys
Probably.
suck because you took all 4 of my picks. All 4 of my
Oh.
picks, man.
You understand you can just pick Junior Motorsports.
No, actually, I'm not, because there's one other Cup guy in this race. He's driving the 48 this weekend, Big Machine. I'm going with Ross Chastain as my favorite. Chastain did really well earlier this year. He had some problems, but he was leading the race in the Cup side. Did a few years ago, was driving the 42 for Ganassi before the whole DC Solar thing fell out. Was involved in a wreck with Kevin Harvick.
Yep.
We see now that his aggression is a trend. But he's got the right approach when it comes to this style of racetrack. I mentioned a few weeks ago when I picked him for Michigan, there's something about the sliding and the car being right on the edge of control that really suits his style. I think it's the same thing that makes Kyle Larson successful. So I'm going to pick him, and I'm going to go really wild on this pick for the wild card. I'm going to go with Sammy Smith. Sammy Smith really impressed me a few weeks ago, and I feel like it's too obvious to go with one of the JRM cars. I really don't. They've run too well at Darlington in the past for me to say I think they're a wild card. It wouldn't be appropriate because they'll be up there. But I like Sammy Smith. I liked watching him at Watkins Glen. Was really good. Won a stage at Daytona, right, and was doing pretty okay for himself. I'm very impressed with this young man. I say young man. I'm like 3 years older than him. But he's done.
Yeah, it's hard to say that, right?
I know.
Think that it's hard when you're in your 20s.
Oh, man.
You guys figure that it's hard when you're in your 20s. Once you get older, it's like, oh, he's a young man. It's like, God damn it. I'm rooting for a guy that's like half my age. That you're going to get there. It's going to happen. But we don't know those guys yet. You guys don't know those guys yet. But yeah, it's really hard.
But yeah, I'll go with those two for my picks. And if somebody out of number 5 and 6 for me can do it, then heck, I'll take it.
I mean, the fact is the Gibbs guys, the Gibbs crew, they have good cars there. And I mean, you ended up picking, I don't know why I pulled that over there. You ended up picking Chastain, which the 48 car.
What?
Lost.
Did we lose Phil?
I think we lost Phil.
Everything is acting up. This is
from pre-show to now. All the fun gimmicks. I got mine out of the way before we got on air, though. So
and I go.
Welcome back.
Hang myself up out of my own show. That's great. You had Sammy Smith. You picked Ross Chastain. Tyler Reddick won earlier this year at Texas, I believe, in the Xfinity Series. That car is a good car. It's RCR supported. The Big Machine Records team. Scott Borchetta, who supports Trans Am and classic racing there. Classic old Trans Am and old GT cars. That's where Borchetta is all around Big Machine Records and Spike Seltzer and whatever the hell their deal is. So now we get into the Cookout Southern 500. 36 cars for 36 spots. The people that are not I guess competing for points or other people is like JJ Alien the 15. Hemrick will be back for his last race this year. In that car, the 16 car for Colleague, Ty Gibbs in the 45, and then Landon Castle coming off of his first career top 5 finish in the Cup Series. So those are the non-drivers. BJ McLeod doesn't run for points in the Cup Series, even though it's his team. It's, I guess, par for the course. So 36 for 36, no problem with qualifying. Everybody makes it. I'm going to go, and Joe, I'm going to let you pick first. Cookout Southern 500. Joe, Josh, and myself will be the order here. Southern 500, one of the biggest races in the Cup Series, one of the most meaningful races. It'll be Labor Day weekend, Sunday evening, so there'll be a lot of grip, but at Darlington, it's a race that gets spread out. It's really a track position race. If you qualify well, you're going to probably be up front anyway. You're not going to really lose a lot of track position unless your car is just strictly a one-lap car. If you have a fast race car, that car is good on 1 lap, 5 lap, 10, 20, etc., etc. And the Southern 500 is one of the hardest races to win. But if you have the pace early, if you have short run speed, you're going to have long run speed. You can have long run speed at Darlington, but you need to be within a reasonable distance to make that long run speed happen. So with all of that, Joe, let us hear your picks for this.
All right. So I was actually after when you said that you wanted me on the show this week, I immediately began thinking about Darlington because it was one of the races I didn't get to catch a lot of earlier this year. And I think Darlington, we talk about Kyle Larson, we talk about I just mentioned Ross Chastain, Denny Hamlin, all relatively good track record there. Hamlin didn't run too well in the spring race, if I remember correctly, or at least not for a long time. Logano obviously won that race. Chastain had some issues, but was leading. Larson, and I think of just normally, like this race last year, there was a very high attrition rate for the playoff cars. The race that Kyle Busch, I believe, famously parked his car out front of, or no, that was earlier this year. But regardless, there's another driver who does really well when it comes to the really slick racing surfaces, when it comes to the, I believe the balance of, maybe not on restrictor play tracks, but the balance of aggression and patience. He's gotten a lot better with that this year. And he's got 2 wins in the bag. He finished second in this race earlier this year. I'm picking Tyler Reddick. I also tried to take into account some of the drivers who were kind of on the upswing and some of the drivers who were maybe not. Chastain has slid a few spots in the points over the past few weeks. Elliott, he's been around, but he just is struggling just a little compared to where he was at. And even though he ran well, not all quite the same. Harvick also ran really well in the spring, but I don't know. I feel a little mixed about where that 4 team is at. I feel a little more comfortable picking the 8 car. I like Reddick. It would certainly be probably the biggest win of his career to date, whether you talk about Xfinity or whatnot. So I look for Tyler Reddick. I think he's going to be really good here. And I'm going to do a sweep for my wild card. Again, I kind of want to go a little bit wild, and I want to go pick Austin Dillon. This actually has nothing to do with the fact that he just won at Daytona, because Daytona and Darlington are two way different tracks. There absolutely is some momentum that can be carried, but Dillon a few years ago finished second in this race to Kevin Harvick and was gaining on Harvick at the end of the race. It took them all night for the car to get there, but they got there, and they, I don't know if that race had run another 5 laps. I don't think Harvick would have won. So, we've seen it before where Dillon performs well at Darlington, where, he comes in and he just stays silent and he keeps chipping away and he gets it done. I think having that win and a little bit of momentum may help. I don't necessarily know that having a TV show is going to help him, but so I'm going to pick those 2. The RCR cars is my favorite for Reddick and my wild card for Austin Dillon.
So with that, I posted that Reddick and Dillon, RCR, being represented by Joe, trying to go and manifest a PR job there because they need help at the PR side with RCR, as somebody who's trying to get in the game or keep himself in the game. What are you looking at, Josh? It's not an algorithm race by any stretch of the imagination, but what are you looking at for Darlington? I have to go and check back with what we picked at in the Xfinity. It was Richard. Okay, all right. So the algorithm was Richard, which isn't that far off.
Well, last week
Ryan Vargas. Ryan Vargas. You had Ryan Vargas, which isn't so. You had Ryan Vargas and
Noah,
and you had, so that means 2 guys in the top 10. We don't want to bring out the algorithm every week because it's not going to hit, but you usually hit on good ones. I figure if the percentages hit out, we are good on the top 10s and top 5s, but we might have to bring it out for the road course in a few weeks' time before. I mean, Talladega and the road course are like back to back, so that'll be something. But what are you looking at for this weekend at Darlington and the Cookout 7500?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of good drivers here, and Darlington's like one of those tracks that anything can happen. You really have to nail the setup just to be able to run well, and you got to be out in clean air, and it's definitely a driver's track. I'm gonna go with Joey Logano to do the Darlington sweep for the year. Ran pretty well there in the spring, led the most laps there in the spring. I think he's a driver that could surprise people. It's been quietly getting top tens the last 4 races last 6 weeks, and he's quietly coming back up there. Ford has not been the best on speed this year, but I feel like some of that can be mitigated, especially on a track like Darlington that's very tough on tires. And Joey Logano is one of those guys that I think he knows how to get around when it comes to being able to conserve tires and make your car last throughout the run. So I'll go with Joe Logano. Darlington sweep for the year, wins the Southern 500 after winning the Goodyear 400 in the spring. And then wild card, it's going to be interesting, but I'm going to go with Eric Jones, someone that's not in the playoffs currently right now, but Eric Jones has been good on speed throughout the whole year for the most part. They just haven't had the luck. So I'm going to go with Eric Jones.
Former winner of this race.
Yeah, he's a former winner too. That's correct. Yes, forgot about that. But yes, former winner. I think Eric Jones can go out there and surprise some people. Run, I'll say at least top 15. Certainly, I think at one of the stages you'll probably see 43 up there in the top 10. So not a surprise if he's hanging around there at the end, and especially if we get a long green flag run or something like that, or fuel strategy comes to play, I think he's one of those guys that could surprise people.
Yeah, he's a really good driver, and at the end of the day, Petty GMS has somebody who's a foundation piece. If they can go and get the sponsorship solidified, they have a guy that can go and do work. In Eric Jones, that Jones boy from Byron, Michigan, as the great Ken Squire said about him. I'm curious as what the announcing will be. I figure it'll be all three drivers. It'll be Jarrett Jr. and Burton in the second stage.
Is it going to be a throwback race?
No throwback race. I think Ellis in Xfinity is electing to do a throwback. Harvick actually today he announced he's going to run not a throwback in a sense, but like some type of Busch tribute car to something from the late 90s. I would have to go back to look at it. I sent it to a friend. But I feel like teams have done this before where they do like a throwback or a half throwback for this race now. But no throwback this weekend. I don't think they're doing anything with the booth.
All right, well, that was that's Fox a shame.
With Richard.
Well, no, they did. Well, no, they did it for NBC as well.
I know, but
done that.
They did in the past, for NBC on the broadcast. But since I don't think this race is a designated throwback race, I don't know. We'd have to go back to last year's show and look at it and see. But I don't think I've heard anything.
I would hope so, but even if it doesn't, it's something that they probably should do because it's something that the fans are into in general. This fan in particular. For me, in regards to a winner for this race, the Southern 500. We've had the picks we have today. We have Reddick and we have Joey Logano. Logano's the second best in the last 10 races. Reddick, 9th best in the last 10 races. Eric Jones, of course, was picked as well by Josh. So 2 guys in the top 10. Yeah, Slowey. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Because Will Byron wanted to go and kill him, even though he wouldn't know what to do with a gun if somebody handed him one. He's a freaking idiot. Was it you have Pizza Face, or was it Austin Dillon was sixth in the last 10 races at Darlington. So a bunch of guys there that have the potential to do it. But I'm going to pick Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick has the momentum. It's one of his best racetracks. He's done the work to go and get himself in this spot. He's also given himself the ability in the Cup Series to go points-wise. Right now, Harvick is in 9th, which, considering from 5th to 16th, is only separated by 9 points. Harvick going and winning this race would be a way to go and flip the points, and it's one of his best racetracks, thanks to Racing Reference to go and give me those statistics to work off of. He's had 5 or 8 top 5s and 10 top 10s in the last 10 races at Darlington. Talking about Phoenix, when Chase Briscoe won, he broke or tied a record with Earnhardt and Mr. the King for most top 10s consecutively at the same racetrack. I'm going to pick Kevin Harvick. And wild card wise, Eric Jones, Austin Dillon, they're outside of the top 10. That's a hard one. That is a hard one. Do I go a homer pick? Do I make that homer pick? Or do I go this way? I'm going to go Alex Bowman. I can't go full homer. I'm going to go Alex Bowman. So Phil makes all of to win, and Bowman, after I shit on him for the Southern 500, in an ode to Greg Ives, who he went and did a throwback for earlier this year or last year or whatever the hell he did the throwback to. Bowman needs a win because he's going to need help to get out of this round of 12, because that team has not been good enough to be in contention. You're really getting, once you get into the round of 8, that's where you're talking about things, which my format would be the format that you could go and really figure out where the round of 8. You eliminate 2 drivers in the round of 12, and then you eliminate another 2 drivers in the round of, to get yourself down to, or you eliminate, I don't know what the math would be. It's like it's 12 drivers, you're 9, you eliminate 3, you have 9 drivers left, you eliminate to 6, and then 6 to 4. I think that's how you do it, but you would have the drivers that can make it there. And that would go and fix everything in that spot. So that is it for the preview or review of everything that happened NASCAR wise here.
We got to hear about Joe's and ours playoff bracket, though.
Okay,
Joe talked about
Go ahead and
Joe told us earlier he had Kyle Busch not making it.
I think
I gotta hear the rest.
I might piss off too many people with my bracket, quite honestly. I don't know.
Well, nobody listens to this show, so you can go and say whatever the fuck
you can tell us who you think's gonna be eliminated.
All right, so let's do this, because I do have it on my phone, and actually I've thought about it since I made it last night, and I do have one slight adjustment that will end up being the champion. So my round of 12, I guess it's easier probably to list the drivers who I have eliminated. Austin Dillon came in. He's been the back of all the playoff drivers in points all year, pretty much. I just have no argument for him to go to the round of 12. None. Alex Bowman won earlier this year at Las Vegas. He had a really stellar playoffs in 2020, playoffs in 2021. It was highlighted with the win at Martinsville. But the way that this year's gone for that team, I just don't really see the performance there over the course of the past 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, which is super concerning. So I have him out the first round. Who are the other 2 drivers?
Briscoe
Oh yeah, Briscoe was one of them. Yeah, thank you. You read my mind. Briscoe. He's just, he had a really hot start to the year. After they made it like 3-4 weeks past that Phoenix win, it's just been a downhill slide. And really, for the past few weeks, really the past like month or month and a half, he's been towards the back quarter of the playoff drivers. And I think the one that would probably make people upset that I'm going to say is going to get eliminated at the end of round 1 is going to be William Byron. He was the first to 2 wins this season. He's been horrible since they won at Martinsville. I mean, I think he's got 1 top 10 since they ran Martinsville or something. I just don't see it happening for him. It's not his year. They started really hot. They have fallen off a cliff, and I don't see any signs of resurgence from that team. So we get to the round of 12, and we're downing to the round of 8. So I have Suarez getting eliminated as well as Cindric. I think at that point, those two will probably be on some form of borrowed time by the end of that round. Now, I could absolutely see either one of them upsetting my bracket by winning at the Roval. Cindric could do it at Talladega or the Roval. He's been really good at the restrictor plate tracks, or the super speedways now. No plates. But, for all intensive purposes, I would find it hard for them unless they won to really make a statement, unless somebody else had some massive issues. The others I have getting eliminated, and this one was actually a little hard for me to do. I have Bell getting eliminated. He's been really hot, especially in this last half of the summer, but the Toyotas just at the road courses this year haven't been there, and I don't really peg him as a plate racer. So to me, if he doesn't win at Texas, it's kind of over for him. And then the final driver I had was Kyle Busch. I think the contracts are going to get to him. He's crashed a lot of cars lately. He has not been himself, both off the track and behind the wheel. I was actually glad, I was a Junior fan, and he once annoyed me after he wrecked Junior. He terrorized me when I was 8 years old, man. Come on, why do you do that? I'm sure you're the same way, Josh.
Yeah, I mean...
But, I have the utmost respect for this guy. I just, the way that this year has evolved for him, it really hasn't evolved. It's been very stagnant. He lucked into a win at Bristol. It's just, I don't think this is the year for him. Now, I'm actually going to make 2 adjustments here. And a lot of this is based off of more recent weeks, I guess. I do believe that regular season champion Chase Elliott's going to advance to the Final Four. I also believe, despite the fact that he's run nearly in the back half of the top 10 the entire season in points, his recent resurgence and his very stellar performances over the past few weeks, despite being rather quiet, have convinced me that he is a championship contender, because this is exactly how we won the 2018 championship. I think Joey Logano is going to make the Final Four and be in Phoenix. Now, originally, I had Ross Chastain here in my 3rd slot, and I'm going to replace him with Tyler Reddick. I have a lot of faith that I have a lot of faith that Tyler Reddick has the potential to really turn some heads. He is fast. He's been fast now for about a month. I wouldn't be surprised to see Chastain. I would be a little more surprised to see Reddick, but as weird as it sounds, I also have more faith that Reddick is going to continue to move the right direction. He's on the upward. Chastain's a little on the downward. And then I have my 4th driver as all reliable. He'll always choke in the Final Four, Denny Hamlin. And this was actually the change I was referring to at the start of this. Originally, I had Chase Elliott as my champion. I thought, the 40 points were going to carry him. He ran really well at Phoenix earlier this year. Unfortunately, it's been proven that running well in the spring race at Phoenix and running well in the fall race at Phoenix have absolutely no correlation since they moved the championship. I'm going to pick Logano. The flat tracks have been a real strength of Team Penske this year, particularly for Logano. He's always run pretty well at the flat tracks, and I think Ford is finally starting to hit on something.
And Brad almost won the championship last year, and Logano finished.
So there's my playoff grid is Logano is the 2022 champion.
And now he would hedge to go and be the guy that's going to be there for the rest of eternity at Penske, and he'd be a 2-time Cup Series champion, something that Brad couldn't do for Mr. Penske. So you'll have pizza face when you go and do your tours of Penske racing. You're going to have like Joseph Newgarden, you're going to have Rick Mears and all the other great legends. You have Emerson Fittipaldi. Well, he didn't win the championship.
And Joseph Logano.
You'll have Pizza Face Joey Logano.
But all right, Josh. I want to hear Josh's grid because I saw the reactions. I know I made some bold picks this year. I don't normally. I don't
have a grid, and I don't really have any real investment in it. But I'm glad you guys do, because there's a side project that you guys can go do because you guys are NASCAR fans like that. I'm not as big a NASCAR fan anymore. So, Josh, go and let us know what your grid looks like.
I mean, it's all in my head. I have not written any of this down, and I'm kind of going by the going by how it is right now. But yeah, I've got Alex Bowman, Austin Cindric, William Byron, and Chase Briscoe all being eliminated in round 1. So I think that
you have Austin Dillon going around 2.
Yeah, I think Austin Dillon goes to round 2 by a thread. It's gonna be one of those he gets in by a 1 point or something, and he makes it in. As I feel like, let's say we got Darlington, Bristol, and what's the other track that we have in the first round?
Kansas.
Those tracks are, I'm gonna say that those are good tracks for Austin Dillon.
Dillon's run great at Kansas over
That's true.
For his mediocrity, he's good there.
And I mean, he's somewhat good at Bristol, and Darlington might be a toss-up, but he ran top 10 there in the spring. So we'll go with that. Round of 12, who gets eliminated there to cut off the round of 8? Chris Bell, I think. He gets eliminated there. I'm going to agree with Kyle Busch getting eliminated after round of 12. Ryan Blaney gets eliminated round of 12. And Daniel Suarez gets eliminated in the round of 12.
So you're saying that Austin Dillon's going all the way to the round of 8?
Oh, no, I'm getting confused with myself. Yeah, I'm going to replace, I will amend that, replace Blaney with Dillon.
Okay.
Yeah, I was counting that wrong there. But no, so then the round of 8, then, of course, the round of 8 cutting off to the round of 12, Ryan Blaney out. Kyle Larson, I don't think he's going to make it back to the Final Four.
I agree.
I don't think he's shown quite enough, and I think Elliott has the edge there. And I like the Tyler Reddick pick, but I can't agree with it because I don't know if RCR quite has the firepower, I guess, in terms of speed to make it all the way to the Final Four. And I've got Denny Hamlin hooking Ross Chastain in the right rear at Martinsville to get eliminated, because I don't think Denny Hamlin's quite paid back Ross Chastain, and he said he was going to do it when it counts the most, and that's absolutely where it counts the most, hooking him in the right rear on the
he disqualifies himself because you're going to penalize him too.
Well,
that's NASCAR protocol.
Nah, they won't.
I don't think they'll do that. I'm not going to say hooking in the right rear. That's very extreme.
Run him into the wall again.
I'd laugh at that if that did actually happen, but I'm going to say that he takes him out. Let's just say
the way that Chase Elliott took Denny Hamlin out of Phoenix.
Can't do that anymore. We don't have tailpipes to cut tires down.
Well, bumps him out of the way or something like that. Spins him out, whatever. So something like that. So then the Final Four: Chase Elliott, Logano, Harvick, and Denny Hamlin. And I'm gonna go with Chase Elliott going for his second title, because I think he's overall figured it out. This car over everybody, and somehow has been the most consistent. So I think he's still got an edge over everybody at the end of the day.
Yeah, I like that pick. Sorry, Phil. I like that pick. I think Hendrick has kind of fallen off as a whole. They had the good run at Watkins Glen, but they're always good there. They need to kind of pick it up at like the 1.5 miles and meet the Toyotas. And then I agree with you. He probably does take it over Logano.
I figure with the way the layout is of the 10 races here, you have road courses, you have super speedways, you have a good balance Clyde can do what he has to do because, frankly, the thing with all these resets, no matter what series it is, they have them in NASCAR, they have it in, what is it? I forget what other series, like NHRA, they have that. At the end of the day, if you're good through the majority of the season, you're going to be able to continue to do that into the final 10. And before we got to this format, it played towards those people that are able to go and accumulate points over the regular season and then just do work and position yourself in a play to go and get those wins. Fact is, Clyde is the one guy at Hendrick. I mean, frankly, Larson did it last year, but he's got that Johnson. He's not Johnson in regards to his personality or his driving ability or whatever, but he's got that Johnson thing where when the time counts, he's going to do the work. And Hendrick wants that title, and Chase is so pissed off because he's getting run over by his teammate. He wants to go and make it happen. This championship is all about Chase Elliott. I feel like this is all about Chase Elliott. If he gets a second championship, does something his dad wasn't even able to do, I mean, to go and separate himself from his father, who's a legend, that would be huge. That's what's on top of his head. That's what Hendrick's sitting there thinking about, the merch and all the things, because fact is Hendrick's about merch selling more than they are about racing. That's been the thing for a few years. The amount of championships they've won ever since Jimmy Johnson stopped winning championships in 2010. He won 2, but they've won 3 championships in the last, 12 years or 11 years. That's not in the same percentage from what they did from 1995 through 2010. They want Clyde to win it, or they want Larson to win it. More than likely, that's the only 2 guys that can go and win that championship amongst their team. I think the one person that would be a wild card would be Kevin Harvick because he's motivated. He's on a heater. He was in a position to win Daytona, and he hasn't really been in a position to win at Daytona in a long time. So the fact that he was there, credit to him and that organization, making a good car. Briscoe was up there. Harvick is motivated. He's going to be around at least 2 years. I figure his career is going to mirror anything that Eric Almirola does. So the fact is, there's at least 2 more years for those 2 guys. I figure Chase Briscoe, he's not going to be moved. Tony is not going to take the heat for firing a guy that is one of his fans, somebody who looked up to him. He's not going to do it. But then also Mahindra, who has involvement now here in the United States, but in Formula E, with Formula E power units and the whole bit, they got plenty of money. So I think 3 of the 4 cars at Stewart-Haas Racing are set. Kevin Harvick's the wild card. If him and Rodney Childers can go and find pace here over these first 2 rounds, he has the ability to go and close the deal at one of his best racetracks. If he can get into the Final 4, it's a problem. 2 years ago, he won 9 races, was trying to wreck Kyle Busch to get himself into the Final 4. If he had gotten in the Final 4, it would have been a totally different thing than what Chase Elliott ended up having, where he dominated that race. Kevin Harvick wants that second championship to go and basically anoint himself into the Hall of Fame. I think that's the only thing that stops Chase Elliott from winning this championship. But there's 10 races to go. Crazy things can happen. Talladega can happen. Kevin Harvick has wrecked people to go and get himself into a position to win a championship and still lose it. This Cup Series championship is going to be interesting, but when you look at the fact we have 16 drivers, it's really more condensed to about 6 or 8 drivers that can really win this championship. So it's something we'll go and look at here over the upcoming weeks. With that, we will end this episode of the Gripster Podcast. Joe, let us know where we can go and find you on the socials and where we can find your work.
So you can find my work. I'm working on an article about who's got to owe Ross Chastain something during these playoffs. That will be my next article on Beyond the Flag. Hoping to have that published before we go racing at Darlington this weekend. So you can find me there at beyondtheflag.com. You can search my name, Joe Passero, and you'll find some stuff. You might see that one at the top whenever it gets published. I'm sure that one will be popular. And then you can find me on Twitter. That's where I do all my stage point updates. We've gotten to the point where I don't have to track 40 drivers anymore, or however many drivers accumulate points. I'm down to just following 16, which is like a weight off my shoulders. So you can follow me on Twitter at Passero Jr., Passerojr. I'll be on there. I'll be tweeting about the races. I will be away for a chunk of the round of 12, so I may not be as active during that time. I'm going to try and keep up with the points. And if all goes to plan, I will actually be at the Roval to cut off the end of that round. So that'll be really exciting. So if you see me out there, come over, say hi, and let's talk some racing. And yeah, thank you guys again for having me on. I always love coming on here. It's a ton of fun. And hopefully, maybe after the season ends, we could do a season wrap up and talk about how crappy or how great our playoff picks were.
We didn't go and record them here on our picks channel, so they're not.
We'll go back and mark them down after the fact.
Josh, yeah, you guys can go and do that. I'm not going to remember it for sure. Josh, I figure before we move on, we can get in your what do you call sim segment, and you can combine your sim segment to where we can go and follow you on the socials.
Yeah, I mean, we'll make the sim segment because I didn't really do too much last week, but I did do a little bit of Daytona racing on iRacing in the Cup Series and Xfinity Series, and it was pretty interesting. And I think the first couple of races I entered, I got taken out in the big one at some point. Whether it was on the first couple of laps or on the last lap. And then I think I ran 2 or 3 races between Cup and Xfinity in the middle of the week, and then I think on Saturday night after I came back from Daytona, and I was kind of feeling like, play iRacing, and played or ran iRacing at Xfinity, Daytona, and Cup at also Daytona, and I actually ran pretty well in those ones. The Xfinity kind of just ran patiently, and then found myself on the top line in second car on the top line, trying to push for the win, and almost pushed my guy to the win that was in front of me. But the other guys behind me didn't have as much momentum. I think some people got taken out, other things, and then bottom line had a little bit more momentum there, so didn't quite get that, but it was a good finish. And then the Cup side, we actually ran the high line in iRacing, which is actually not normal for Daytona, because normally when we get single file, we always run the bottom, but somebody actually had the presence of mind to try running the top, and everybody followed him, and the top line actually ended up being the strong line in the Cup Series. So that was actually interesting, because I've never seen that before, and it was a interesting setup there, and it was one of those deals where you had to really have a lot of draft on the bottom lane to be able to make moves to try to get up front, and it was actually quite hard to do that. So it was maybe a little bit more resemblant of real life than how it normally is, because they do run the top a lot when they're in single file green flag runs to log laps and go through everything without racing too hard. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. And of course, when I do stream, you can follow UCLR2 on Twitch. You can go on there and hit the follow button or subscribe, and see my stuff, and see where watch, or what I'm racing, and how I'm racing. You can go in there and see how I'm doing on there. And of course, for this page, for this show, you can go on our YouTube page at Grip Strip Podcast and see our YouTube channel. You can see the moment last week, of course, when Phil gagged when we picked Noah Gragson for the algorithm pick, and see his reaction on there. It was pretty entertaining, and hopefully we get some. If we have to use the algorithm, we get some more picks like that. Maybe not necessarily Phil not liking it, but something that's just incredibly out there. Like last year when it picked Tate Fogelman, and then Tate Fogelman actually won. That was still pretty incredible. So you can see all of that on our YouTube page, and like our page, comment, subscribe, do all those good YouTube things to interact and follow our stuff. And of course, you can follow me at JP Huffine, and see what I'm doing, see all my commentary on the racing and all sports and all my other interests, and see what I have to say. Of course, with Cup, we talked about the Cup race, and talked about the controversy from Sunday with the rain and the crashing and all that, and see all my good takes on there that I have. So you can go follow me on there at JP Huffine on Twitter, and that's all I got. So thanks Joe for coming on, and it was always good to have you on. So I'll leave it to you, Phil, to carry out the close here on this episode.
Yeah, the memes. I was watching the clip you posted on our Twitter feed at GripStripPod, and it made me laugh. Same way as old friends of mine when I lost my shit when Tony won his last race. It's classic, and we posted it here. It made me dry heave, and then I was rooting for it. So I can even root for somebody who I think is a deplorable. It's a part of life. You have to go and deal through with all the stages of grief. But it's part of the fun that we have here on the GripStrip Podcast. First of all, thanks Josh as always for being my sidekick and doing your thing. Thanks Joe for being a great sidekick and friend, both of you guys. We have a great time here doing this show when we are together. We go long. It's a show that is more meant towards just listening during your workday. We deep dive, we go and get into details. We're not meant for those people who just need that short snippet of information. We're more towards the thing that you listen to when you're going and working, and that's our niche, and it's part of what makes the GripStrip Podcast unique. We will be back with episode 132 shortly, but episode 131 we'll start working on editing and posting that here, which is the Demolished Equipment and Opportunities episode. We'll talk about Formula One, the roundup. We'll preview IndyCar and F1. We'll talk about football, fantasy football, and the like here in the next episode. You can find me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter, at GripStripPod on Twitter. We're anywhere we're podcast. You can download a podcast. We're on YouTube at GripStrip Podcast. And so with that, for myself, for Josh, for Joe, thanks for listening to the GripStrip Podcast, episode 131. We will be back later this week for episode 132 to cover everything else motorsports, and we will be back next week on Labor Day to cover everything that took place in motorsports: Southern 500, Portland, IndyCar, Dutch Grand Prix, which Max Verstappen will probably win. We'll cover all that and more on the GripStrip Podcast. So thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us, liking, subscribing, downloading, the whole bit. And we'll be back again next week during Labor Day. God bless to everybody. Go and have a good week. Go and have a good time. Have fun during the long weekend. Don't go too hard. And we'll be around to go and recap everything that goes on in the world of motorsports and sports as we lead into a busy time for us as motorsports fans and sports fans, if you're a fan of, football, baseball, and the like. Take care. God bless. Goodbye.